Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. So after hitting the ground in front of him, it ricocheted upward and struck a light fixture. A double ricochet? The bullet hit the light fixture and bounced back toward Haruya, who simply raised his hand and pulled the trigger. A slightly pinkish bullet flew out of the barrel, curving slightly off its intended path before colliding with Jibral's bullet. Bang! The pink heart-shaped bullet dissipated in the air. Got you. Jibral's voice rang in Haruya's ear, her breath even brushing against his earlobe. Whoa. Why that reaction? My master said that having a beautiful lady breathe into your ear would be exciting. Different circumstances. Stumbling backward, Haruya fell to the ground. Jibral took the opportunity to raise her gun, aiming it at Haruya's forehead. It's over, humanity. She said, sure of her victory. No, not yet. As his body fell backward, Haruya smirked. A bullet suddenly appeared behind Jibral. Sensing the danger, Jibral's pupils dilated slightly, her amber eyes showing a hint of panic. However, that expression quickly turned to composure. Grabbing Haruya's clothes as he fell, Jibral used the momentum to fall with him. Due to her extra movements, Jibral forgot to pull the trigger. Caught by Jibral, Haruya tried to swing his right hand to aim at her, but the impact of hitting the ground left him disoriented. The bullet he fired flew past Jibral's back, hitting the wall and ricocheting out the door. When did you know? Was it when you turned around? The Flugel suddenly asked. Haruya had turned around while fleeing, luring Jibral into firing her bullet at the same time, causing it to ricochet along a calculated path. He had thought that firing simultaneously would mask the sound and some of his movements, but that idea was ultimately naive. Pinned under Jibral's weight, the softness of her body still couldn't bring him back to his senses. It feels so painful. Haruya had this illusion. No, was it really an illusion? Oh. Shit. Jibral brought her face close to Haruya's, staring at something behind him. Why is there a knife here? Could it be stuck in your back? Can you get off first? Nangu Haruya in the virtual world. Dead. Checkpoint, reload. Haruya watched as Jibral charged toward him again. Wait. Hold on a second. As he ran forward, he abandoned his initial plan. Jibral, ignoring Haruya's plea, continued her pursuit. After all, they were in the middle of a battle. However, Haruya suddenly stopped running. He turned around to face Jibral. I can tell you things about your masters that you don't know. Jibral stopped in her tracks, her eyes sparkling. Really? But you're not friends with my masters, are you? That's true, but I have a very powerful information network. This. To Jibral, Sora and Shiro's tablet contained thousands of books, something she considered a marvel. So it was possible she believed Haruya's claim. Jibral, stroking her chin, sat down on the stairs and lowered her gun. Then tell me. Sure, what do you want to know? The Flugel started. When my masters take a bath, which part do they wash first? A bath? Why would she want to know that? It seemed Jibral was deeply fond of Sora and Shiro, both for their knowledge and their infinite potential. To buy time, Haruya felt he had to answer this question. But then, how should he answer? If he made something up, Jibral would surely see through it, given her vast knowledge. A poorly crafted lie wouldn't work. In that case, he'd have to fabricate something. Drawing on his imagination, utilizing all the light novels, anime, and game scripts he'd ever read or played. This. Haruya clapped his hands, revealing a confident smile. Of course I know. I'm human too, after all. Of course, this was a shameless lie. Chapter 17, Haruya and Jibral's bath debate. On the other side, Izuna and Sora were locked in an intense battle. Unlike Haruya's situation, the constant killing of NPCs by the siblings and Izuna to replenish their energy had caused more and more NPCs to gather in their respective areas. By deducing each other's positions based on the NPCs' movements, they began exchanging fire. Izuna, wielding a love gun, leaped between buildings, her high physical stats allowing her to move flexibly across different structures. Since Sora and Shiro were just humanity, Izuna held an absolute advantage in terms of physical ability. Looking down at the siblings below, Izuna crouched low, raised her gun, and prepared for her next ambush. Meanwhile, the broadcast on the other side left the humanity, where a beast, and delved spectators utterly speechless. It was more like they were thinking, what the heck are these two idiots doing? But the humanity spectators didn't dare say it out loud, as one of them was a Fleagle. The elderly Were-Beast, Hatsus Ino, also remained silent. He quietly used a frequency only Were-Beasts could hear and whispered. Don't worry, that Fleagle idiot is busy doing something ridiculous with Nangudano. She won't be able to interfere for now. Something ridiculous, Disu. Yes. Exactly. It's just not right. Uttering a complaint, Haruya struck a pose mimicking someone scrubbing themselves with a towel, crossing his legs in a way that somewhat resembled a JoJo pose. Watch closely, Jibril-san. This is the correct way to bathe. How can you possibly bathe with just one hand? You need both hands. That's not true. Although the topic has strayed a bit, using one hand to bathe while doing something else with the other is the correct way. You can bathe with one while you read a book with the other. Isn't that just reading? Reading in the bathroom will get the book wet, you know. With both hands as if carrying something, Haruya stood on the ground, swaying his arms back and forth, mimicking the act of scrubbing. If you use magic, you can prevent the water from touching the book, so it's fine. And what kind of pose is that? This is how you do it. Jibril raised her left hand as if holding a book, while her right hand scrubbed her chest. The bouncing of her chest elicited an "ooh" from the audience. This is how it's done. And when washing your body, you should start from the top, right? Jibril scrubbed her chest while pointing a finger with her left hand. Washing from top to bottom prevents dirt from recontaminating the skin below, doesn't it? That's true, but I still insist on washing from bottom to top. Haruya twisted his body, moving his hands from bottom to top. Jibril-san, you probably think washing from bottom to top would cause dirt from above to fall onto the skin you're washing, right? But your method does the same thing. Washing from top to bottom causes dirt from above to fall onto the skin you're cleaning, making it dirtier and prolonging bath time. That's a waste of life. No, when bathing, you should always wash from top to bottom. How could anyone wash from bottom to top? That's because your perspective is too narrow, Jibril-san. You think my perspective is narrow? I didn't read all those books in a library for nothing. About the earlier topic, you always wash your hands first when bathing, right? Shouldn't you wash your feet first? Haruya began pretending to scrub his feet. If you wash your feet first, you don't have to worry about bending over to wash them later. Just sit down, like this. Jibril, sitting on the stairs, pretended to scrub her body from top to bottom. Haruya usually washed his feet first, then his hands, while Jibril did the opposite. And washing your wings is also important. No, Jibril-san, we humans don't have wings. Then wash your balls. Anyway, there's a difference between washing your hands first and washing your feet first. Instead of arguing about this, Haruya tilted his head. Should you wash your hair while bathing? Some people do that, you know. Jibril nodded, as if remembering something. Back in my hometown, there were people who washed their hair while bathing. But isn't bathing just about cleaning your body? The definition of bathing is an act of removing sweat, dirt, and oil to relieve fatigue. In other words, any action that cleanses the body is considered bathing, and that includes washing your hair. Ah, I see. I also remember a bathing weight loss method. Haruya gave up on his twisted bathing pose and cleared his throat before saying, the order is. Number 1 arms, from the outer side of the arm, starting at the joint and moving toward the fingertips. Number 2 legs, from the outer side of the thigh down to the ankle, applying pressure. Number 3 abdomen, gently massage along the direction of intestinal movement. Number 4 buttocks, rotate and massage to lift the butt. Noted. Jibril seriously memorized Haruya's words and pinched her own abdomen. She didn't look particularly fat, just a normal figure. But even Fleagle girls, like ordinary women, are interested in losing weight. I never expected you to be so knowledgeable about bathing, Haruya-sama. Have you studied it in depth? Not at all. Although he had once entered a women's bathhouse, he quickly reloaded a checkpoint before getting killed. After all, that was a completely reckless and degenerate act. By the way, about where Master and the others bathe. Mostly under the arms and around the stomach, right? How do you know that? Just like you Fleagle have wings, we humans also have our own bathing methods. Of course, this was a lie. As long as Jibril didn't ask the siblings, Haruya's lie would hold. Okay, now that the small talk is over, I must quickly defeat you. It's about time. Haruya believed that Izuna had already suppressed Sora and Shiro by now, and the next part of the plot would unfold. Izuna would be hit by Steph, and Haruya had to prevent that from happening. But how could he escape from here? How could he avoid Jibril's pursuit? Thinking this, he didn't waste any more time and instead took the initiative, firing his gun. Taking the first move won't work on me. Jibril quickly stood up and chased after Haruya with enough force to nearly shatter the ground. Facing the pursuer behind him, Haruya, who was far from fast enough, was quickly caught by Jibril. The trigger was pulled, and... Checkpoint, reload, ugh. Using a clumsy, falling motion to dodge Jibril's attack, Haruya repeatedly pulled the trigger. Give up, Haruya-sama. Humphrey. Haruya snorted, pulling a love bomb from his pocket and throwing it. Faced with a bomb at close range, Jibril released him and backed away. The bomb hit Haruya, and then... Ah! I'm so handsome. Why didn't I notice this before? Maybe I'm the reincarnation of the legendary Narcissus. My handsome face, perfect jawline, body contours that exude charm, deep and wise eyes. Flugel over there, why aren't you kneeling before my handsome appearance? Ah, I never want to be apart from myself. He had become narcissistic. Jibril, standing opposite him, showed a complicated expression. Ah, I need to go back and see how handsome I was before. Even though he had become narcissistic, he hadn't forgotten his ability. Checkpoint, reload, everything that just happened was just an illusion, right? He wiped the sweat from his forehead. What are you talking about, Haruya-sama? Jibril, pinning Haruya to the ground, pointed her gun at him. Well, let's think of a way to escape this crisis without becoming narcissistic. Chapter 18, Lawless are the best. While being pinned down by Jibril and having her sit on his back, Haruya recalled some unpleasant memories. Many touching stories are built upon past misfortunes, but Haruya's not-so-touching story has always been built upon the misfortunes of the present. However, if you were to ask whether he's happy now, the answer would undoubtedly be yes, because happiness outweighs misfortune. In the end, humans are just humanity. Although you're quite interesting, Haruya-sama, my master's orders are absolute. I'll eliminate you from the game first. I'm just an ordinary person. Why do you have to come after me? Haruya asked. I'm also quite puzzled as to why my master prioritized you over that were beast loli. With that, Jibril placed her hand on the back of Haruya's head. Please fall in love with me for now, Haruya-sa. Before she could finish, Jibril was sent flying off Haruya's back. Whether it was to dodge a bullet or because someone had suddenly rushed into the room and kicked her arm, the result was the same. Crashing into the wall, Jibril felt both puzzled and intrigued. There was only one person who could appear here to save Haruya, and that was Izuna. Turning his head, Haruya slowly got up and looked to his side. There stood the disheveled beast-eared Lili. Izuna, why are you here, Izuna-chan? Shouldn't you be? Grandpa told me not to come, Disu. But I couldn't just leave Haruya alone, Disu. Her breathing was slightly uneven, but her body was in peak condition, having not been worn down much by the Kawaku Blank siblings. Izuna then glared at Jibril. Stop bullying Haruya, Disu. Oh? You've got some temper, huh? I'm just carrying out my mission. Even if you're here, it won't make a difference. Dismiss the Fleagle. I'll stop you, Disu. No way, no way. Even if Haruya-sama might have guessed my actions, he can't stop me. So. Jibril slowly walked toward the two. As long as I avoid you, little one, I can take out Haruya-sama. In an instant, Jibril's high-speed movement caused Haruya to lose sight of her. Even so, Izuna's eyes locked onto Jibril's high-speed figure. Both sides pulled their triggers, and the bullets cancelled each other out not far from Haruya, turning into pink hearts that vanished into the air. Their movements didn't slow down due to the attack. Instead, they began circling Haruya, exchanging fire. Although Haruya couldn't clearly see the battle, he vaguely grasped the rhythm. Just as Izuna rushed past him, he stepped forward, shouting and charging at Jibril with his shoulder. Bang! Haruya was sent flying instead. Naturally, he was no match for Jibril. Though because of this, Jibril also slowed down. Here, Disu. Using the environment to bounce around, Izuna circled to Jibril's side and rear. As Jibril slowed down, Izuna closed in and pulled the trigger at close range. Damn it! Jibril turned, using her left foot as a pivot to spin her body and dodge the attack. Izuna pressed in close, giving Jibril no chance to create distance. Her small size gave her better mobility. Even though they weren't on the same level, in the game, she could match Jibril. No, she might even surpass Jibril. Checkmate, Disu. Without hesitation, Izuna fired a bullet at a distance where Jibril couldn't dodge. Did she score? Haruya, lying on the ground, watched the battle, but Jibril safely retreated in the next moment. Thank you, Master. The Fleagle shouted cheerfully. Failed, Disu. Returning to Haruya's side, Izuna explained why she couldn't hit Drumroll. At the moment I fired, another bullet had already been shot from outside the door. I was careless, Disu. Was that a bullet fired by Shiro? Most likely, Disu. Precise calculations. Disu. Staring at Drumroll, who had escaped to the street, she left a message under the summons of the siblings. Next time, I won't be so careless, where beast will I? And you too, Haruya-sama. With that, Drumroll disappeared from their sight. Were they safe for now? Haru let out a sigh of relief, but Izuna showed no intention of stopping. They're defending the park. There are only two entrances, the main one and the sky. We need to break through, Disu. As long as we could defeat one of them, Disu, Izuna added. Nodding, Haruya stood up from the ground, but he nearly fell due to the earlier impact. Izuna, standing beside him, supported his body with her small hands, which were surprisingly strong. Thank you, Izuna-chan. No problem, Disu. Thinking about whether he should pat Izuna's head, Haruya ultimately decided against it. Let's go. We'll win this game. Yes, Disu. Running alongside Haruya, the two began sprinting down the street. The surroundings looked very much like Tokyo, Japan, but Haruya had only seen it in movies. Not long ago, he had considered joining a tour group to visit there, but he kept spraining his ankle, forcing him to give up. Even reloading his saves would result in him spraining his ankle on those days. It was truly infuriating. To rid himself of this bad luck, Haruya had tried exorcisms, spirit banishments, and disaster removal rituals, but all ended in failure. Looking around at the buildings, the text on them was in this world's language, not Japanese. Each block was quite large, with many small blocks in between, each housing different shops. The terrain wasn't as complex as he had imagined, making it easy to figure out the route. During the run, he tripped a few times and nearly collided with sharp objects. Not wanting to embarrass himself in front of little Izuna, he used several reloads to avoid recent accidental deaths. This game was still quite dangerous. To avoid being wiped out or ambushed, Izuna moved on the rooftops while Haruya stayed on the streets. In reality, she had incredibly sharp perception, making ambushes nearly impossible. But it's better to be safe than sorry, so they opted for the cautious approach. Sora and Shiro were about to use that move. Their cooperation, their determination not to lose. With Sora's expertise, and Shiro's calculations, they would lead the were beasts to defeat. That wasn't the outcome Haruya wanted. It would make conquest even more troublesome. Izuna-chan. What is it, Disu? Thank you so much for saving me earlier. It's nothing, Disu. Because Haruya is also important. Disu. Beast-eared lawless are truly the best. With this, there's no way he'd let the were beasts lose this game. No matter what, the were beasts nation and allies should be his. Chapter 19, Haruya's Disruption Method. Haruya knew full well that having flashbacks in the middle of a battle was a bad habit, but he still couldn't completely rid himself of this way of thinking. In negative terms, it was an act of escaping reality. In positive terms, it was a way to calm himself down through recollection. While following Izuna, he recalled an incident from the past when he participated in a race with others. It was an incident, not just a simple event. The prize for the race was a limited edition figurine of a three-no goddess that Haruya had his eye on, and most of the participants were fellow otaku. At first, he thought everyone was on the same starting line, but in reality, there were also many normies among them. Indeed, there's no strict definition of what makes someone an otaku. Anyone could become a fan of an anime. Just as Haruya was getting excited and ready to sprint for the figurine, the road collapsed. It might have been a natural occurrence, or perhaps it was yet another stroke of misfortune caused by Haruya. Because of this incident, the race was cancelled, and many people ended up in the hospital, though fortunately, there were no casualties. From this, Haruya realized that his misfortune could spread to others. Of course, he had no reason to tie all the misfortunes around him to himself, nor did anyone say that an unfortunate person couldn't lead a happy life and escape their misfortune. In the end, so-called misfortune is simply the result of happiness being outweighed by misfortune. If happiness outweighs misfortune, can't that be called happiness? Just as he was thinking this, Izuna, who was moving alongside him, ran into trouble. Her sharp senses failed her as her clothes got caught on a falling sign, nearly causing her to fall. Fortunately, even when off balance, Izuna could recover through her own movements. Although Haruya wasn't sure if this was caused by him, he couldn't easily let it go. But now, he had to separate one thing from another and think carefully and meticulously. Before he could finish his thoughts, Izuna's question interrupted him. Haruya, you must be really strong, right? They sent that fleagle after you instead of having her fight me, Disu. Haruya, on the street below, shook his head. Not really strong. I just did some things that made them wary, so they're being cautious. That pair of siblings is very meticulous. I remember you said, Bisu. Izuna jumped from one rooftop to another, that you're from another world. But on the first day you arrived, you became a noble of Elkia, Bisu. Oh my, you know about that? It was just luck. I've done some research. There's still a lot I don't know about Haruya, isn't there, Bisu? So that's what Izuna-chan probably wanted to know. But now wasn't the time to reminisce or tell his story. They were already very close to the park where Sora and Shiro were. The enemies, Kawaku, were planning to use Shiro's calculations to take down Izuna, so there couldn't be any mistakes in the process. Shiro would pretend to be hit by Izuna, then use the fight with Sora as bait. Next, Drumroll would pressure Izuna, forcing her to take action. From the current situation, the only ways to break through the siblings' defense were from above or below. If Izuna attacked from above, it would follow the original plot. So, what if Izuna charged from the front? Impossible. Such an idea was inherently unreasonable, and the reason was simple: Haruya couldn't take Izuna's place and attack the siblings from above, a height of over 10 stories. Shooting from such a height would make it impossible to hit the siblings, and with Drumroll defending there, it would only make failure more likely. Compared to the original plot, Izuna's only advantage now was Haruya. How could Izuna win without using her trump card? Did such a method even exist? Haruya, enemies are coming, Bisu. So soon? Impossible. They shouldn't be. It's NPC girls, Bisu. Haruya let out a sigh of relief. Now wasn't the time to panic. Exchanging a glance with Izuna, the two picked up their love guns and began firing at the NPCs surrounding them. Presumably, Ino was reporting information to Izuna from the other side, i.e. the sibling pair's movements and Drumroll's current actions. Sora and Shiro must have known that Izuna and Ino were communicating and would therefore likely set up their plan at the last moment, not revealing anything to Ino outside now. In that case, there was only one thing Haruya could do. He casually threw a love bomb, not at the NPCs, but to attract their attention. What are you doing, Bisu? They'll notice, Bisu. Don't worry, this is a tactic. Izuna-chan, you charge from above their position and launch a surprise attack. I don't understand, but I got it, Bisu. Seeing that Izuna didn't press further, Haruya slowed down. I'll distract them from another location. Haruya, don't get taken out so easily, Bisu. Ah, okay. Responding to Izuna's words, he also offered some encouragement. Go and claim victory, Izuna-chan. Understood, Bisu. Right now, there. Izuna fell into her own thoughts. Up until now, she had defeated many races that challenged the werebeasts of the Eastern Federation. She must have her own plans and ideas for changing the current situation. Although she was young, her gaming skills were incredibly refined. In this virtual game world, without magic, a Fleagle's physical stats were about the same as a werebeast's, so Izuna wasn't at an absolute disadvantage. Additionally, she possessed an ability called Blood Break. A power that exceeded physical limits, one that even bends the laws of physics. Izuna had her own goals, and both of them shared the same thought. For victory. To that end, Haruya's complex thoughts narrowed down to a single goal: to disrupt Sora and Shiro's plan. He couldn't let them complete their plan and push the battle toward humanity's victory. The most crucial part of their strategy, aside from Shiro's calculations, was Steph firing the decisive shot. Based on the NPC's movement patterns, the initial situation, and the replay of the plot in my memory. Is she Steph over there? His gaze fell on the eastern intersection of the crossroads. Without overthinking it, Haruya ran over. Now wasn't the time for doubt. When it's time to act, act. When it's time to hold back, hold back. That was probably many people's creed. Despite experiencing countless misfortunes, Haruya still believed in happiness. Kem and Mimi were one of the sources of his happiness. He had to achieve his goal. Find Steph, make her fall in love with him, and in doing so, shatter their plans. Chapter 20, Haruya's collapse method. Things often don't go as one imagines, and now Nanbu Haruya was facing such a situation. To put it another way, it wasn't entirely against Haruya's expectations. At least, the development of Shiro pretending to be Sora's enemy was still the same. However, why is this happening? Haruya, running at full speed through the alleyways, let out a cry of despair. His confusion was soon answered by someone nearby. Because our escape routes are the same. I won't forget that you're my enemy just because of this. The one speaking was Sora. Sweating profusely, he said this while dodging Shiro's shots and still finding time to fire at Haruya. Although Haruya wanted to shoot back, slowing down even a little would allow Shiro to catch up. Since Shiro was only pretending to be hit, Haruya was worried that she might suddenly shoot, putting him in an uncontrollable state. Even if he could reload his checkpoint and try again, it would only waste his mental energy. This was an easy situation to understand. Even though Haruya could infinitely repeat his actions through save scumming, even though his body would return to its original state, and even though he could continuously learn about his opponents, his consciousness still experienced everything once. If he kept repeating the same time period, he would likely suffer a mental breakdown. Haruya had never repeated the same time period more than 20 times before. Otherwise, it would put immense pressure on his mind, making it hard to distinguish which was the real save and which was the load. But I don't want to just run away, Haruya. Even while my adorable sister is chasing me, I'll still chase you. You should worry about yourself first. Haruya dodged Sora's sixth shot. This was because Sora was under Shiro's influence, and most of his shots were meant to block Haruya's escape routes, preventing him from successfully running away. The distance between the two wasn't far, which meant Shiro's attacks could easily hit both of them. This wasn't good news. Thinking this, Haruya increased his speed. Whoa. Aren't we supposed to be otaku? Why are you running so fast, Haruya? Even otaku have their moments of sudden power-ups. Also, I was in the track and field club in 3rd grade. Haruya said. That was almost 10 years ago. Retorted Sora. Ignoring Sora's witty remark, Haruya searched for another way out. Noticing Sora's movements behind him, he realized Sora was trying to use continuous shots to block his escape, forcing him to stay on the same path. Why? Was it to make sure Haruya entered the building with them, avoiding Izuna's line of sight so they could shoot him? Jumping forward to avoid an obstacle on the ground, 2 ricocheting bullets flew toward him from behind. He failed to dodge. Checkpoint, reload. After reloading the checkpoint from before being hit, Haruya memorized the trajectory of those 2 bullets, preparing to dodge after they were fired. But here, Haruya discovered a flaw in his save scumming. Just as he took action, the sibling pair also adjusted their shooting trajectory. Huh? Trying to dodge, but encountering the exact same situation as before. Checkpoint, reload. Even after reloading, every minute change he made caused the siblings' attack trajectories to change as well. They were perfectly targeting him. Realizing this, Haruya thought it was due to his insufficient influence on the world line after reloading. So, during the next reload of this scene, checkpoint, reload, he pulled out the last love bomb from his pocket and threw it on the ground, forcing the pair to abandon their shooting and dodge the explosion. Whoa. Trying to take us down with you? Sora let out a cry of despair, glancing at his sister behind him before scrambling to catch up with Haruya. Before he knew it, they had reached the top of a building. Haruya had wanted to avoid this. Whatever. Even if this happened, as long as I could change the outcome. Reaching the edge of the rooftop, a 3-way standoff formed. Shiro pointed her gun at Sora, Sora pointed his at Haruya, and Haruya pointed his at Sora. Though it was more like 2 against 1. Suddenly, Shiro charged at Sora while pulling the trigger. Sora used his clothes as a shield to block the shot, but Shiro tackled him, sending them both falling off the building. Without hesitation, Haruya jumped after them, trying to hit both the sibling pair at once. At that moment, a figure rushed out from the opposite building. It was Izuna. On one of the floors of that building, Drumroll, now an enemy, also raised her gun at Sora and Shiro. Our victory, Bisu. Izuna grabbed the falling Haruya and pointed her gun at the siblings. Almost simultaneously, Shiro, who had pretended to be hit, also raised her gun. What? It was an act, Bisu. Surprised, Izuna let out a gasp but didn't slow down. It's coming. Shiro pulled the trigger, and the ricocheting bullet aimed to hit Izuna from a blind spot. Unable to gain leverage in midair, if Izuna was hit, Haruya would also become easy prey. At that moment, it activated. Izuna's blood surged uncontrollably, capillaries burst, her eyes and body hair dyed crimson from the blood, nerves heated up, cells boiled, muscles ignited, even the laws of physics swept. Blood break. In a feat that mocked the laws of physics, the crimson figure, Izuna, silently vanished. You've lost, Bisu. Her voice resounded accompanied by laughter. Unlike the changes in her body, she was enjoying the game now. Not for the country, not for territory, not for resources, but simply to achieve victory. Defeating the enemy was the ultimate goal of a gamer. Moving at supersonic speeds, it was as if she ignored gravity. The humans, Sora, Shiro, and Haruya couldn't perceive her movements at all. Her powerful, destructive force allowed her to use the air as a foothold. A double jump. This cheat is too OP. Sora said this as both he and Shiro fell. At the same time, Izuna pulled the trigger. Haruya had expected that both the siblings would be hit following the plot, but reality had changed that. Shiro shielded Sora at this moment. Useless, Bisu. Izuna wanted to attack again, but Haruya saw it. Steph had appeared among the NPCs. Much earlier than in the plot. Dodge, Izuna. Shut up, Bisu. Her blood-red eyes, with a hint of impatience and a slightly hoarse voice, told Haruya to stay quiet. At that moment, Sora fired a shot. The target was Jibril. Is he trying to hit Izuna while also restoring Jibril? Unable to do anything in midair, Haruya sighed. He wanted to grab Izuna, who was now closer to him, but he failed. Below where he was falling, dozens of NPCs were gathered. Haruya fell towards them, and the NPCs reached out to grab him. Behind him, the plot continued to unfold, but with some differences. Izuna was about to be hit, he couldn't do anything, and Jibril would be restored. So. Sigh, very well, let the game collapse. Haruya was caught by the NPCs, and the result was full body pain. It felt like his bones were being crushed as countless NPCs clung to him. His entire body ached, and his heart pounded violently. The pain was like death itself had him in its grasp. There are explosives designed to detonate when the heart stops beating, and conversely, there are bombs that trigger when the heart beats too fast. And so, when Haruya's heart beat too fast just now, the box he had made earlier silently triggered the short-circuit mechanism connected to the VR machine. As his consciousness began to fade, outside the game, Ino's trembling voice rang out. How could this be? The game. It's gone black? Chapter 21, Game disrupted. As a game that determined the ownership of all the territories of Elkia under the Eastern Federation, there was no way the game could have just crashed. Undoubtedly, the organizers led by Hatsu's Ino had conducted thorough checks. After all, for them this was a game they were certain to win, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. Yet, despite this, Ino was now wiping the sweat from his forehead and letting out a deep sigh. Ino had seen it clearly. If it hadn't been for Haruya's actions at the last moment, Izuna would have likely been hit. It was a situation that even Izuna using her blood break ability couldn't have anticipated. No, even Ino, who had been monitoring everything from the outside, hadn't foreseen it. Shiro's desperate calculations on the park grounds. It wasn't a tactic to defeat Izuna. It was the wandering algorithm of the NPCs roaming the surroundings. Everything had been calculated by the siblings, including Jibril becoming an enemy, Shiro pretending to be hit, and Izuna using blood break. Rather than calling it calculations, it was more like precognition, huh? Ino looked at the suddenly noisy audience. Even if they didn't understand what had happened, they knew that Sora and Shiro had turned the tables and gained the upper hand. But then again, what should they do now? There was no victory or defeat, so the right to erase their memories was also gone. Thanks to this, everyone present would know what kind of game the Werebeasts had been using. Once word got out. In fact, this game had already been under surveillance by Elfgard, so it was bound to be exposed sooner or later. But Ino wouldn't let that happen easily, especially not letting the elves get their hands on this information. Please calm down. Everyone, please calm down. Stay patient. We'll find out what happened right now. The people who had entered the game had already regained consciousness. The chairs they were sitting on were now emitting black smoke from the back. It's going to explode. Shiro-chan, quickly, came to my arms. That's usually movie logic. According to common sense, it won't explode so easily. Shiro patted the worried Sora's head, her gaze fixed on the smoking chairs. Haruya came to his senses, his consciousness still a bit hazy. Amidst the dazzling lights and noise, Haruya looked to his side at Izuna. She had just returned from the game, her face pale, and breathing heavily. Izuna-chan, are you okay? I'm fine, but what just happened, Bisu? Looking around, Izuna and Haruya quickly jumped up from their seats. Jibril, who had stayed on her chair, pulled up the somewhat limp stuff and moved her away from her original position. Although it wouldn't explode, everyone was still worried about potential accidents. Tightening his clothes, Haruya let out a sigh, feeling that he had achieved his initial goal. The Werebeast staff began their inspection, opening the boxes behind them. It would probably take some time. The people present looked at each other, unsure of what to say. At that moment, Ino, who had initiated the game, stepped forward. I'm not sure how to resolve this situation. Since the game has been terminated, we must discuss what to do next. Is that so? Could it be that you deliberately caused this, old man? It wasn't me, I can assure you of that, Soradano. Something unexpected must have happened. Is that so? I thought it was something like an unplugged internet connection without saving, just as Izuna was at a disadvantage too. Hearing Sora's words, Izuna clenched her fists. I wouldn't lose, Bisu. Don't beat Sun dear, Izuna. More importantly, did you have fun? It's not about having fun, Bisu. Hearing Izuna, Shiro walked around her brother and gently stroked Izuna's fur, just now. Izuna-tan smiled. She was happy. That was just. No, Bisu. Her voice grew softer, and Izuna lowered her head, unsure of what to say. Haruya thought for a moment. The game had been forcibly terminated, and it wasn't even a draw. How should they judge the outcome? No one had won, and no one had lost. They had just enjoyed playing the game. Given the current situation, the werebeasts were undoubtedly at a disadvantage. According to the pledges, they didn't have the right to erase the memories of the undefeated players, nor could they erase the memories of the thousands of Humanity spectators. In the midst of the silence, it was the carefree genius gamer, the virgin youth named Sora, who broke the silence. As he walked past Haruya, he patted Haruya's shoulder. "You were a bit beyond our calculations. I didn't expect you to last so long against Drumroll. It was just luck," Haruya said offhandedly. "Gamers don't rely on luck." Drumroll, who seemed to have been slighted, pouted and leaned closer to Sora. "That's not true, Master. This Humanity seemed to know my attacks and dodge them so easily. It was so unfair." "Drumroll, too noisy." Shiro grabbed Drumroll's wing, silencing her. Shiro-sama's hand is so warm, so comfortable." Ignoring Drumroll for now, Sora extended 3 fingers. "Let's talk about the current situation. Old man, you have 3 options now. Or rather, 4 both of us do." "I agree. Go ahead and tell me." Ino nodded. Since the game had been abruptly terminated, Ino had nothing more to say. Option 1. Repair the game and restart it. As for memories, the participants' memories must be preserved. This. Old man, do you still have the guts to refuse? We had the advantage, but the game was interrupted because of you. Sora continued, or you can choose the second option. Option 2. Don't repair the game and start a new one. Our memories of this game can be handled as you wish. The elf, Feel, already had the data probably, and the siblings would surely obtain it. If the werebeasts chose the second option and didn't repair the game, the significant advantage they had in the game would disappear. Moreover, if it was a game other than a video game, Drumroll, as a Fleagle, would be the biggest problem. So, what about the third option? Seeing Ino remain silent, Shiro spoke up. Option 3, the simplest one. Treat it as a draw. And fulfill everything according to the pledges. It was clear that even if Sora and Shiro suspected Haruya of meddling, they had no intention of backing down. Haruya's plan this time was perfect, but it also carried the flaws that came with perfection. Chapter 22, Plan Restart. Please allow us some time to consider. After consulting with the Shrine Maiden, the sole representative of the Eastern Federation, we will contact you with our answer. Is that acceptable? Hatsusano gave this response while also imposing a restriction on the Covenant. Within the days it takes for the Eastern Federation to provide an answer, the memories of the game participants and the audience will be temporarily erased. The memories will return once the answer is given. Since there was no reason to object, and Sora and Shiro had already obtained sufficient information, they agreed. This way, the Humanity race was left in a state where they had played a game with the werebeasts but hadn't reached a conclusion, and no one knew what the game was about. Thanks to this, Ino, accompanied by Izuna, left to report and discuss with the full representative of the werebeasts. From what Haruya remembered, the sole representative of the werebeasts was a charming fox-eared shrine maiden, residing in the shrine of Kanagari City, the Eastern Federation's capital city. Thinking about these tedious matters, Haruya realized that after Izuna left with Ino, things had become quite boring. Playing his PSP, he executed a perfect combo and defeated the enemy. As the victory sound played, Haruya tossed the PSP onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. At the moment, there wasn't much Haruya could do, nor did he have any immediate means to change the current situation. His only advantage was that, even under the Covenant binding, he wouldn't forget the contents of the game. This gave Haruya more options. He could continue helping little Izuna, or he could team up with Sora and Shiro. But the siblings' goal was to establish the Elkia Federation, while Haruya's goal was to become the sole representative of both races. The nature of a federation and a sole representative were completely different, with fundamental differences that made peaceful coexistence impossible. That's true, but being in a hostile state with Sora and Shiro isn't a good thing. I need to find a way to set the pace. No matter what action he took, he needed to maintain a certain rhythm. Otherwise, he would inevitably end up in a passive state, which wouldn't be good. The current situation is that the werebeasts are discussing solutions regarding the game, while Sora and Shiro on Humanity's side will continue to take action. I also need to seize the opportunity to do something. At the moment, the plot wasn't progressing as quickly as expected. Thanks to Haruya's interference, it had slowed down greatly. Even so, the slowdown wasn't something to celebrate, as the core issue remained unchanged. Up until now, Haruya still hadn't become the sole representative of any race, meaning he hadn't taken the first step. However, in the end, to become the sole representative of a race, one needed capital and power. It wasn't something that could be easily achieved by someone like Haruya, who lacked significant capital. Thinking this, Haruya suddenly jumped up from the floor and ran to the window, breathing in the fresh air outside the embassy. There might be a way. His shout startled the beast-eared maid cleaning outside. Dressed in a maid outfit, she dropped her broom and looked up at Haruya. Being stared at by the beast-eared maid, Haruya crossed his arms at the window and began to ponder. The siren. The siren are ranked 15th in Exceed. And simply put, they are the mermaid race. Living in the shallow seabed, their upper bodies are human humanity, while their lower bodies are fishtails. Their ecology is extremely unique, primarily because they can't stay out of the sea for long. Because of this, they built the underwater city, Oshendo, with a vast ocean as their territory. Since the Siren Queen longed for a fairy tale-like love story, she froze herself and entered a self-induced cold sleep that lasted 800 years. However, this action wasn't a fairy tale, but rather the biggest joke in the world of Disport. The Sirens are also known as the race of fools, the hopelessly stupid mermaids. Haruya knew very well how to win over the Siren Queen. The problem was, he couldn't just go there without a reason, right? If he aroused suspicion and the other party refused his challenge, there would be no way for him to become the sole representative of the Siren race. The Queen had sworn an oath to the pledges, and what she had gambled was everything she possessed. The thing is, she hadn't become the Queen during her cold sleep, but after the previous Queen passed the authority to her, everything she gambled became everything belonging to the Sirens. Within everything belonging to the Sirens was the paramount position of the Sirens' sole representative. In short, whoever could win over the Queen and make her fall in love with them would gain control of the Siren race. If that was the case, according to the plot, shouldn't he first go find that damper boy who was seeking help? The cross-dressing damper looked like a beautiful girl on the outside, but was actually a trap boy. Hopefully, he was now wandering around the Eastern Federation's Elkia embassy. Earlier, Haruya had asked about Izuna's room, so he planned to take action tonight. In any case, I should rest first. Rather than constantly worrying about problems and potential accidents, it was better to let his body rest and adapt to the upcoming pace. Haruya's goal was simple, to win over the Siren Queen and become the sole representative of the Sirens, thereby gaining the capital and power he needed. Whether the plot would follow Haruya's script depended on how he acted. External factors existed, but as long as he could properly use his save scumming, Haruya had infinite opportunities and possibilities. Dinner was delivered by a few beast-eared maids. After teasing one of them, Haruya was met with a cold glare and silently finished his meal. Actually, not all the beast-eared maids in the embassy disliked Haruya. Some would blush and run away when they saw him. Later, Haruya realized it was because he had forgotten to zip up his pants. Aside from these trivial matters, he wanted to ask for advice from Hatsuyus Ino, who had 30 wives. Despite being a weird old man, he had somehow managed to win over so many beast-eared girls. Glancing outside, the sky had already darkened, and the moon rose while a gentle breeze blew in through the window. Let's watch some hentai before going. With that, Haruya opened his tablet. Just as he finished previewing the cover of The Adventure of a Beautiful Girl That Makes You Xu and Full of Energy, This is Sengoku Peach SS. Featuring a dazed-looking beauty, he suddenly sensed a presence behind him. No, he actually just saw a shadow. Turning around. Under the light, the figure that finally appeared was a girl dressed in black, as if wearing the night itself. Short blue hair, dazzlingly glowing purple eyes, white teeth, and small bat-like wings on her back. Although she looked like a 15 or 16-year-old girl by humanity standards, she was a dapper. She was just like the vampires that appeared in typical creative stories. Did I just lure a damper with hentai? That was Haruya's first thought. Chapter 23, The Cross-Dressing Damper Vampires. In movies, anime, and novels, they are often portrayed as evil beings who survive by drinking human blood, living in the darkness, and representing the night. However, with the influence of the Mo trend, the once evil and terrifying creatures have gradually become a Mo attribute. Mo vampire girls, timid vampires, and cute vampires. And now, a cross-dressing vampire. Well, not vampire per se. In Disport, these beings are called damper. While they do share some traits with vampires, they also have distinct differences. Anyway, Haruya was aware that the damper by the window was actually a trap. Of course, since the damper hadn't revealed their true identity to Haruya, it was better to continue feigning ignorance and refer to them as her for now. Backlit by the moonlight, her wings and shadow fell into the room, and her sharp teeth seemed to emit an eerie glow. Her yellow, purple and blue eyes were filled with a mix of confusion and worry, but the corners of her mouth were slightly raised. Image here, finally found you, humanity. Mwahaha, bow before me. Ouch. Her stomach suddenly let out a loud growl, and her face instantly turned pale as she fell from the window. Her head hit the ground, and she let out a muffled duck. Before collapsing sideways. Haruya was momentarily at a loss for words. He put down what he was holding and walked over, poking the damper's cheek with his finger. Hey, are you okay? Noble blood aristocrat. Ugh. I'm so hungry. I still have some snacks and fruit. Want some? Haruya offered. I don't need snacks or fruit. I just need. In this world, damper are a tragic race on the verge of extinction. Even Chiyunabiu lines like "Let me grant you the eternal and powerful force of the night" couldn't be used to describe them. Huff, please. I'm dying. Give me your soul. The damper said weakly. Whoa. Has the devil came to collect my soul? The damper looked confused, not understanding what Haruya was saying. Done with fooling around, Haruya looked at the damper on the floor. She was breathing heavily, her expression a mix of confusion and pain, with beads of sweat on her forehead. Her slightly revealing outfit showed off her delicate, girly skin, which was also covered in sweat. The temperature in the room had risen significantly due to her presence. Even if she's a boy, as long as she's cute, it's fine, right? What the heck am I thinking? Shaking his head, Haruya crouched down beside her and said, "From the information I've gathered, because of the 10 covenants, your damper race can't harm others without violating the covenants. That means you're on the verge of extinction, huh?" "That's right. Just give me a little bit of your soul essence, okay? Please." "Soul essence, huh?" Your damper race absorbs soul essence from blood or bodily fluids, mixing the absorbed soul essence with your own to grow stronger, enhancing your power. Those who are bitten by you lot also undergo soul essence mixing, contracting a special disease. Given that, how could I possibly give you my soul essence? Besides, even if I could, I wouldn't dare. Thinking this, the damper on the floor slowly got up. She propped herself up with her hands, drool dripping from the corner of her mouth, her eyes unfocused. "If you don't give it to me soon, I'll die. I'll die. Even if it's not blood. As long as it is bodily fluids, it's fine." This is the first time Haruya has been so desired by someone, even if their target is just his bodily fluids. But then again, what kind of bodily fluids could he even give her at this moment? Haruya had always been the type who didn't sweat much, and he couldn't exactly produce what she wanted on the spot. "I'd like to give it to you, but I can't just produce what you want out of nowhere," Haruya said. Staggering to her feet, the damper looked down at Haruya, who was still kneeling on the floor. I'll do it myself." With the last of her strength, she shouted loudly, "Plum! Ambush!" Just as Haruya was wondering what she was about to do, his sensitive area was suddenly grabbed by Plum, who had fallen on top of him. "If it won't come out, I'll make it." What the hell? Facing this sudden and shameless assault, Haruya reached for Plum's head, wanting to throw her off, but it hurts so much. Letting out a cry of despair, loud enough to be heard throughout the entire embassy, Haruya's tears streamed down as Plum's hand suddenly tightened around what she was holding. Seizing the opportunity, Plum pounced on Haruya and began to drink his tears. After licking enough of Haruya's tears, Plum exhaled and regained some of her energy and sat on Haruya's bed, although it's a small amount. But it's enough. Haruya wanted to unzip his pants to check if anything was damaged, but he decided to save that for later. Being squeezed like that wasn't entirely bad. No, what am I thinking? My soul will never be offered to this devil. Thank you for the meal, humanity. Plum said this while licking her fingers. She stood up, slightly lifted her skirt, and bowed. "I am a damper named Plum. Please take care of me. Take care of you, my ass. I demand a compensation for what you just did to me." Haruya sat up straight, looking displeased at Plum, who was sitting on his bed. She tilted her head and replied in a very polite tone, "Of course, no problem. As long as it's not something outrageous, I can agree to anything. After all, you did save my life just now." "Very well then. My name is Nangu Haruya, though you can call me whatever you like." "Then I'll call you Haru-kun." Hearing the nickname Haru-kun, Haruya was reminded of how his old friends used to call him that. They should all be working now, right? Returning to the present, he focused his gaze on the cross-dressing damper, Plum. "You said you're called Plum, right? First, let's clarify why you're here. And why do you want to know that?" Plum questioned. "Do you still want those fluids?" "I'll talk right away." Plum gave in immediately. Not vampire-like at all, these dampers seem more like succubi. Haruya thought. "Originally, I came here to find the humanity race's sole representative, but I got lost and ended up here." "Indeed, the soul essence of an humanity is the most delicious, completely unpolluted," said the damper, still savoring the aftertaste of Haruya's tears. "Are you indirectly calling me a virgin?" "Not at all, I wouldn't dare. After all, I'm a lone soul too." "What the heck? Isn't that just another way of admitting you're single?" Haruya thought. "Anyways, delaying that matter a bit isn't a problem. So what kind of compensation do you need, Haru-kun?" "It's simple." Haruya extended a finger. "Take me to the capital of the Sirens. Oshendo." Hearing Haruya's words, Plum narrowed her eyes slightly. For what purpose? To win over the queen, answered Haruya. Unlike her previous reaction, Plum's eyes widened. That's a strange request, but it's also quite interesting. Chapter 24, Tragic Incompetence. Now to organize the information we have so far. Specifically, the details that others are unaware of. Due to the 10 Covenants, both the Sirens and the Damp are gradually facing existential crises. Sirens reproduce through consuming every last drop of their mate's soul essence. Simply put, they essentially kill their mates to reproduce. However, because of the 10 Covenants which prohibit harming others, that's no longer a thing. Damp rely on the act of bloodsucking to obtain nutrients and facilitate their physical growth. However, this process infects the soul of their victims with a disease that causes death upon direct exposure to sunlight. So, similarly to the Sirens, the 10 Covenants prevent them from continuing to suck blood. To prevent the shared extinction of their two races, the Damper proposed a symbiotic relationship between the two. After all, even if the Damper suck the blood of the Sirens' inherent inability to come ashore means that the sunlight lethality disease would have no effect on them. In other words, the Damper initially intended to form a united front with the Sirens. That is, the Sirens would provide blood, and in return, the Damper would offer their magic to lure the males of other races into gambling their lives against the Sirens. However, the Sirens bit back against the Damper's proposal for coexistence. The reason was simple: the Damper, without using their magic, proposed a game that would end in a draw, signaling their desire for a symbiotic relationship. The Sirens, however, keeping true to their stigma as the race of fools, failed to understand the Damper's intentions and unilaterally won the game, even celebrating their victory with great enthusiasm. As a consequence for the crushing defeat, the Damper were forced to agree to a contract stipulating that males of their race must assist the Sirens in reproduction and that these males could not suck the blood of any race other than the Sirens. A rather bizarre arrangement. As expected of the race of fools. Both races, due to the 10 Covenants and the incompetence of their representatives, are now on the brink of extinction. I don't know why you want to challenge the Siren Queen, Haru-kun, but I can tell you this. You'll definitely fail if you try to do it alone. Are you saying there's a chance if I'm not alone? Of course. With my assistance, Haru-kun, you'll become irresistible. Standing with her arms raised triumphantly, Plum looked at Haruya with a proud expression. We have a guaranteed winning strategy, after all. At this point in the conversation, Haruya realized something. Plum was using him. In the original storyline, Plum had planned to use the siblings Sora and Shiro, the representatives of humanity, to secure a victory for herself. If Sora and Shiro lost, the Sirens and Damper would gain control over all of humanity's resources. Now, Haruya had no significant status or position, he was merely a noble of Elkia, though Plum didn't know this. But for Plum, he still represented an opportunity. Plum's initial plan was simple: if the game succeeded, she would be the sole winner due to her use of magic. If Sora and Shiro won without using magic, the Siren Queen's wager of everything she possessed would transfer the Siren's obligation to provide blood to humanity. Either outcome would allow the Damper to break free from the Siren's control. Now, with Haruya as the new candidate, the first part of the plan could still proceed. While the second part wouldn't transfer the obligation to humanity, it would still secure a blood provider for the Damper. In short, the only way for Haruya to achieve complete victory was to conquer the Sirens without relying on Plum's magic. This way, he could gain everything the Sirens had while avoiding becoming food for the Damper. By the way, Plum, before we proceed, can you tell me more about your current situation? Sure, it's simple. Plum smiled. We Damper can survive by consuming fluids other than blood. Then, she continued, but to grow, we need to suck blood. That is, without the mixing of souls, we remain perpetually childlike. And finally, because of the pact with the Sirens, only male Damper are forbidden from sucking the blood of other races. But since they remain childlike, reproduction among Damper is impossible. To obtain blood, males must obey the Sirens, and to produce offspring, females also end up having to obey the Sirens. Plum's gaze lingered on Haruya for a moment, glancing at his lower body before looking away and licking her lips. You must have heard the big joke by now. The Sirens reproduce by draining the souls, soul essence, of male members from other races. Although they only produce one offspring per generation, there are also special individuals among the Sirens that can be reproduced without entirely draining the soul essence of males. The Damper provide reproductive assistance exclusively to her, upholding her as the queen, the sole representative of the Sirens for generations, adopting the practice of reproduction only with the queen. However, the current queen has done nothing of the sort. After declaring, I will not wake until the prince who can awaken me appears, she just froze herself and entered a cold sleep. I'm not that kind of person, Haru-kun. Why do you want to conquer the Siren Queen? Although, for me, Waking her up would be a good thing. Why is that? Asked Haruya, and would they even accept a challenge from someone as ordinary as me? They'd accept with no trouble at all. After all, if you fail, you'll just become one of them. Plum answered. Becoming one of the sirens essentially means becoming food for the dapper. Let's talk about the troublesome stuff later. Haru-kun, do you have a bathroom here? Can I borrow it? Sure, it's over there, the wooden door on the left at the end of the hallway. The guest room Haruya occupied was quite well equipped, with everything one might need. Sorry for the trouble. As Plum said this, a large amount of luggage suddenly appeared behind Plum. Yes, Plum had been carrying a lot of luggage from the start. She had used the damper's signature ability of concealment and illusion to reduce the presence of these items. She must have spent a lot of effort sneaking over to the Were-Beast and Humanity territories, and she could only move quickly at night. You. After setting the luggage aside, Plum leaned in close to Haruya's face questioningly. You're not surprised at all that I suddenly brought out all this luggage? It's like you knew it was there from the beginning. Aren't you dampers experts at visual deception? Haruya simply pointed out. Humphrey, whatever. I'm going to take a bath. Plum gave up on pressing the issue and began removing her outer clothes as she walked toward the bathroom. Just as Haruya was recalling the plot, Plum called out from the bathroom, Haru-kun. Where's the shampoo? I think it was replaced. It's outside, I'll bring it to you. He remembered the cat-eared maid mentioning it earlier. Carrying the shampoo toward the bathroom, Haruya was halfway there when the door opened. White steam poured out, revealing smooth, damp skin, dripping hair, crystal-like eyes, and soft, red lips. This is beyond adorable. Hurry up and give it to me, Haru-kun. Ah, right, here you go. After handing over the shampoo, Haruya hurried back to the living room. Ugh. Now I understand Sora's plight in the novel when he encountered this little imp. Chapter 25, The Gentleman and the Sea. Wake up, wake up. The sun's about to rise. Early in the morning, after a long and detailed conversation with the damper, Plum, the night before, Haruya had fallen asleep feeling exhausted, planning to sleep until noon. Haruya's sleep schedule had always been fairly regular, but today was an exception. However, his plans were disrupted by the noisy commotion early in the morning. Someone was pushing his body and muttering something. If you don't get up, I'm going to bite that thing down there. While I'd like to experience that, I'll have to decline. What's going on? Is it the angels attacking Earth or something? Let the Evangelion handle the enemies. After all, he wasn't some hero destined to save the world. Honestly, being a hero didn't come with many benefits. Most heroes ended up losing something precious because of their righteous actions. Angels? Earth? I have no idea what you're talking about, Haru-kun. Didn't you say you wanted to conquer the Siren Queen? Now's the time to act. I don't want to travel during the day. Ugh, what a hassle. Let me sleep a little longer. Go play with my game console or something. I refuse. I don't want to, and I'm really hungry right now. With that, Plum crawled into Haruya's thin blanket. As the damper squirmed around under the covers, Haruya felt something warm and soft brush against his chest and stomach. What are you doing? What? There's no sweat at all. Plum, her tongue pressed against Haruya's stomach, mumbled incoherently before licking her lips. No bodily fluids. Bummer. I told you, I'm not the type to sweat much. How about saliva? Want some? Open your mouth. Are really? Excited, Plum opened her mouth, stuck out her tongue, closed her eyes, and trembled with anticipation, looking utterly desperate. It's a bit too intense for the morning, don't you think? Grabbing Plum's forehead, Haruya pushed the ravenous damper aside. I'm not just going to give away my first kiss like that. Wait, is Haru-kun's first kiss still intact? It doesn't matter anyway. Once you've done the deed, none of that will be an issue. Saliva, saliva. Stop it. Not now. If we head out later, I'll probably sweat a bit. It's been really hot lately. Fine. I can wait a little longer. Sitting upright, Plum stood up and erased the presence of all her luggage, pointing at the sky where the sun had yet to rise. Let's go. To the ends of the horizon. Don't make it sound so grand. We're just going to conquer a queen who's a few hundred years old. After making some quick preparations, Haruya left the Were-Beast embassy with Plum, leaving a note for Izuna to let her know he was going out to play. By the time he returned, he might already be the Sirens' representative. The Sirens' nation, Oshando, was located in the southern seas east of the Eastern Federation. Getting there without transportation would take some time. So, Haruya used his noble status and wealth to hire a Were-Beast merchant to transport him and Plum. I didn't know you were a noble of Elkia, Haru-kun. You must be rich, huh? Something like that. Now, I want to know more about that surefire method you mentioned for conquering the queen. And how do we even approach her if she's in cold sleep? Even though Haruya already knew the answer, he pretended not to avoid raising suspicion. Plum replied saying, "It's simple. Even though the queen is in cold sleep, she is still conscious. So, we can create a spell to interfere with her consciousness, her dreams, and make her fall in love with someone. It's like a love game. Isn't that against the 10 Covenants? Interfering with dreams sounds like harm. Theoretically, yes. But since the queen herself declared she is waiting for someone who can make her fall in love, entering her dreams is considered consensual. It doesn't count as harm. Winning the love game would grant them 30% of Oceano's underwater resources and a permanent alliance. As a noble of humanity, Haruya could use this opportunity to rise in power, or so he thought. Plum continued without pause, and the surefire method Harukan wants to know is using magic to force the queen to fall in love. Revealed the damper. Forced emotional manipulation? That should be impossible under the 10 Covenants. But Plum quickly explained, normally, yes. But the queen is waiting for someone to make her fall in love. That means she's consented to it, so we can exploit that to manipulate her emotions. In short, it was a clever loophole, one that was hard to argue against. Alright, enough about the complicated stuff. Can I have your sweat now? Plum suddenly reminded. Haruya looked at the sky outside and nodded. Let's run, Plum. With that, he pulled Plum along and started running across the beach they had just arrived at. After running for about 30 minutes. Slurp. 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 That's enough. After letting Plum lick his face and arms multiple times, Haruya pushed her away. Plum touched her lips and hummed softly, "Thanks for the meal. Harukan's fluids are absolutely top-notch. The transport ship from Oshando should be here soon. We arrived a bit early, so let's wait here." With that, Plum climbed into a prepared box as the sun began to rise. Sitting on a beach chair in shorts and a t-shirt, Haruya watched Plum, who was using magic to distort the sunlight inside the box. Plum. Calling her name, Haruya noticed she seemed a bit sluggish in the sunlight. After a moment, she replied, "What is it? Are there any beautiful girls in Oshando?" Hearing Haruya's question, Plum gave a satisfied answer from inside the box. "That's a strange question, but yes, most of them are beauties." Good. Gazing at the distant horizon, Haruya waited for the ship from Oshando to arrive. He was ready to set off for the underwater city. Chapter 26, The Sirens Are Indeed Idiots. If Haruya were with Sora and Shiro right now, they'd probably order Jibril to use 5% of her heavenly smite to split the sea in half. After all, the Flyagil were created to kill gods, so their overwhelming combat power is a given. However, Haruya currently doesn't have a powerful Flyagil like Jibril to help him. All he has is a cross-dressing damper hiding in a box to escape the beautiful sunset. We've been waiting for almost a full day now. We've even finished the takeout we ordered earlier. Did the sirens forget about us? No, Harukan. The sirens might be idiots, but they're very serious about things like this. The sunset dyed the sky in fiery hues, the clouds above glowing like flames. Plum shrank further into the box. I think they're probably preparing a welcome dinner or something for us. An underwater feast? By the way, I'm not really good at swimming. It's fine, Harukan. I have a magic spell that lets you breathe underwater. I'll just cast it when the time comes. That is, if I'm not too hungry. I'm not giving you my sweat, especially not now. How stingy, Plum grumbled from inside the box before suddenly jumping out. The sun had completely set. Stretching, Plum's face looked a bit pale. Even though she was hiding in the box, she had to use a spell to avoid the sunlight refracting inside, which took a lot of energy. Haruya sat on a beach chair, sipping juice, while the empty takeout boxes sat on the table. Just as Haruya was about to ask Plum to contact the sirens again, the sound of the waves grew louder. Splash, splash. The calm sea became noisy, and under the light of the newly risen moon, a ship emerged from the depths. Plum put her hands on her hips and smiled. They're here. Finally. Took them long enough. Haruya stood up and looked at the ship floating not far away. It was an incredibly luxurious ship, adorned with seashells and pearls from the ocean floor. At that moment, a small boat appeared beside the ship and began moving toward them. Wait. As the boat got closer, Haruya realized it wasn't moving on its own. It was being pushed by several mermaid girls. Sirens. We've come to welcome you. The one speaking had long black hair, like the night sky above, but her expression was icy cold. A stoic mermaid is still irresistible. Boarding the ship, Haruya asked one of the mermaids, "Can I touch your tail?" "Can you please die?" was her response. "Never mind, forget I asked." Sitting on the small boat with Plum, Haruya noticed Plum staring at the ship while explaining, "For the sirens, their tails are very important. They won't let just anyone touch them." What about your wings? Haruya reached out and grabbed Plum's wings. They were incredibly soft, like touching fabric stuffed with cotton. As Haruya held her left wing, Plum bent over, placing her hands on the edge of the boat and shouting, "And no. Stop. What are you even saying?" White drool dripped from the corner of her mouth as she twisted her body to escape Haruya's grasp, half sitting on the boat. My wings aren't just any wings. They're not something anyone can touch and feel. Who cares? Haruya dismissed. Plum quickly changed the subject. We're almost there. Once we're on the ship, I'll cast the spell on you. Please don't do anything weird, or you might get drained dry here. I can't tell if this is heaven or hell anymore. Haruya muttered. After boarding the ship with Plum, Haruya was given the spell that allowed him to survive underwater. Soon, the ship began to descend, and the surroundings grew dark. However, this didn't last long. After a while, the view brightened. And then, he saw it. Not a fairy tale underwater wonderland, but a massive underwater city. Countless buildings, seemingly constructed from stacked seabed stones, stood side by side. The pearl-colored stone walls were adorned with thin layers of coral and seashells, creating vibrant and dazzling colors. Thanks to the buoyancy of the water, complex arches and inverted cone-shaped structures, impossible to build on land, caught Haruya's attention and stood out prominently. The underwater city of Oshendo, this was the capital of the Sirens. The illumination came from glowing jellyfish and other special species, making Oshendo as bright as day. Stopping at the entrance of a street, Haruya noticed mermaids passing by, though none lingered for long. Following Plum to a dedicated reception room, they encountered an idiot. "Hello there, hee exclamation mark. I'm Amira, the acting representative. Everything's totally okay. Exclamation mark. The mermaid named Amira, who appeared in front of them, spoke in a nonsensical manner. Her lush aquamarine hair, translucent white skin, and bright blue eyes stood out. She was adorned with coral decorations, yet it didn't come off as tacky. Image here, for a mermaid, that might count as formal attire, but her personality. To think we have visitors again, Amira is so happy. The only way to express this feeling is with a kiss, right? Exclamation mark. While I'd like to, I'll have to decline." Haruya shook his head. "Yeah," Plum chimed in. "Harukan's saliva belongs to me alone. What nonsense are you spouting?" Haruya gave Plum a light chop on the head. "Anyway, you two must be tired. Let's enjoy the delicious dinner we've prepared, and then we can talk about other fun topics." Seeing Plum nod, Haruya didn't object and followed Amira to the dining hall. After a full day of waiting, Haruya was indeed hungry. While Plum could eat normal food, the souls of other species were the most important nourishment for her growth. Ignoring Plum's request for his saliva, Haruya and the others arrived at the dining hall Amira had mentioned. It was brightly lit, decorated with pearls and seashells, with seaweed drifting between the gaps. By the way, the seaweed was colorful. "Look. This is the dinner filled with love we've prepared for you. Let's dig in." Sitting down, Amira patted the seat next to her, signaling Haruya to sit. Reluctantly, Haruya took the seat, while Plum sat across from them. "By the way, let's talk while we eat. You, Nanbu Haruya, the noble of humanity, came here for that comma, right? How strange rather than a purpose." Both Haruya and Amira put on serious expressions. Picking up her utensils, Amira continued, "Conquering the queen means Nangu-sama, you're an Oyaji-kan, right?" "Absolutely not. The Sirens really are idiots." Chapter 27, The 10-Second Conquest Method. Sitting at the dining table, Amira raised her hands, holding a knife and fork, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Ahaha, no use lying to me. The queen may have been in cold sleep for hundreds of years, but she's still as beautiful as ever. Yes, she's a blessing for all those Oyaji-kans." When she realized she was being a bit rude, she shook her tail and straightened up. "I already told you, I'm not an Oyaji-kan. I'm more of a Kiminamami and Lilai kind of goo." "Wait, no, that's just a joke. What I really want to know is how you even know about stuff like Oyaji-kan." The reason is simple. Our neighbors, the werebeasts, often sell games to us. Some of them are about love stories between students and teachers. That's what you call Oyaji-kan, right? Not exactly, but you're close. There are indeed games that feature interactions between students and teachers. However, the term Oyaji-kan is not entirely accurate in this context. Typically, Oyaji-kan refers to individuals who are attracted to older men. Older men? Amira stared at the meat on her plate, tilting her head. "It's been a long time since I've seen an adult male from another race." Please enjoy tonight's dinner. The lives of Sirens really are quite monotonous. On the other hand, the Damp aren't much better. Both races are on the brink of extinction due to the 10 Covenants, and one way to solve the problem is to awaken the Siren Queen. Even if the queen is awakened, it won't solve all their problems, but it would at least alleviate the immediate crisis. Staring at the food on the table, Haruya casually picked up some vegetables with his chopsticks. Eating underwater is such a strange experience. Amira-san, has Plum told you everything about why I'm here? Not everything. Keeping some secrets is allowed after all. The covenants don't require us to reveal everything to the other party, right? Though in my opinion, those who keep secrets are just idiots. As she spoke, Amira's gaze fell on Plum, who was sitting across the table. This comment was clearly aimed at Plum, who snorted in dissatisfaction. I don't want to be called an idiot by an idiot. How arrogant. Anyway, I mostly understand the situation. Amira put down her utensils and fixed her azure eyes on Haruya. The queen isn't someone just anyone can disturb. As a challenger, I'd like to know what capital you have, Nangu-sama. It was clear that even if someone was willing to risk everything to awaken the queen, Amira wouldn't just approve their request to challenge her. Even if Haruya would become food if he failed, Amira was expecting greater gains. Faced with this probing question, Haruya finished the food in his bowl. My capital isn't much, but I have something you need. He raised his right hand and extended his index finger. First, my status as a noble in Elkia allows me to gather information and understand the actions of humanity. Then he extended his middle finger. Second, aside from my status, the wealth I possess is something you probably can't do without. My family's treasures practically fill the basement. Both Amira and Plum showed interest at this. Facing extinction, having financial support would make things much easier. Moreover, Oshando's current resources would be affected by the establishment of the Elkia Federation. After all, the Were-beasts would prioritize trading with humanity over the Sirens. Finally, Haruya extended a third finger. I can see through people's secrets. Huh? Amira's expression turned to confusion, while Plum looked at him with a face that screamed you're lying. Gesturing for Amira to come closer, Haruya whispered into her ear, which was partially hidden by her long hair. You know, don't you? The victory condition for the queen's game isn't making the queen fall in love with you. But you don't know the real way to clear it. What? Amira's eyes widened, and she quickly glanced around to make sure no one else was present before leaning even closer to Haruya. Normally, you can't smell anything underwater, but perhaps due to Plum's spell, Haruya noticed a faint fragrance coming from Amira. Something fragrant in the sea. Sea flowers. Waves? No, this isn't a riddle. Though Haruya had heard that some seaweed has a slight fragrance. Facing the eccentric mermaid who had leaned in close, Amira placed her hands on Haruya's shoulders. You can really read minds? I already told you earlier. I don't want to repeat myself. I can, or maybe I can't. Geez, why is humanity so mean? They even came down to the sea to steal our pearls before. Her shoulders slumped, but Amira didn't give up. Then, what do you want to do? She actually started acting like a child throwing a tantrum. Not swayed by Amira's antics, Haruya grabbed her cheeks with his hand. Like I said from the beginning, I am here to conquer the queen. Conquer? But, do you have a method? With her cheeks being pinched, Amira couldn't speak clearly. Meanwhile, Plum, who had been listening to the conversation, leaned in closer. I don't plan on wasting time. Haruya continued, and you don't have much time to waste either, do you? This was the truth, and it made Amira fall silent. The Sirens were facing extinction, and the Damper were in a similarly precarious situation. The way to change their fate was to awaken the queen, which would give them a chance to reproduce. The 10 Covenants had restricted the lifestyles of both races, so they needed to find another path. Suppose. Amira looked at Haruya, what would happen if this humanity became the Sirens' representative? Currently, Amira was acting as the proxy representative, but she needed to consider the implications of Haruya truly awakening the queen. As a member of humanity, or rather, as someone who had betrayed humanity, what would Haruya do to the Sirens? The interests and future of the Sirens currently rested in Amira's hands. The queen, who longed for love, was still waiting for her prince. It was all quite troubling. Then, she asked a perfectly reasonable question, Nangu-sama, what method do you have to awaken the queen? How much time will it take? Well. Haruya thought for a moment before saying, 10 seconds. You're an idiot. Ah. Being called an idiot by a fool and a brainless damper. Chapter 28, So what if I like older women? The 10-second conquest method was absolutely not a lie. After all, Haruya possessed information that no one else had. The simplest way to conquer the Siren Queen was in his hands. According to the 10 Covenants, harming others was a violation of the pledges, which was why no one had ever succeeded in the Queen's game. To conquer the Queen, one had to take the risk of breaking the pledges. In fact, according to Plum, harming the Queen was allowed, but only under the condition that it was to make the Queen fall in love with you. Therefore, as long as one risked everything to choose the path of conquering the queen, the above flag would be triggered, leading to the conquest ending. After finishing dinner with Amira and Plum, Haruya, with their permission, followed Amira to the place where the queen was in cold sleep. "Excuse me, can I make a small request? I hope you'll agree, Nangu-sama. As long as it's not too unreasonable, I'll probably accept." "That's great. It's wonderful that Nangu-sama is such a reasonable humanity, unlike those who steal our pearls and money." Amira glanced around. Behind them was Plum, who was also listening intently to their conversation. After all, for Plum, whether Haruya could successfully conquer the queen was a matter of life and death for the entire Dampa race. Just as Haruya thought Amira was about to make her request, Amira suddenly pointed outside the corridor with her fishtail. "Oh my!" Exclamation mark, "Look over there. Isn't that someone selling super sweet watermelons from the Eastern Federation?" Where? Plum was immediately fooled. Using the buoyancy of the water, she left the corridor and looked around. It was said that bats liked to eat fruits and fish, while smaller bats preferred to hunt insects. And given that Dampa, like vampires, also had some bat-like characteristics, it seemed to be true. After briefly distracting Plum, Amira quickly grabbed Haruya's hand and sped up. "My request is very simple. I hope you can protect the sirens." Amira's words were based on the premise that Haruya could conquer the queen. Generally, Amira didn't want anyone to conquer the queen, as it would mean handing over everything the sirens had to someone else. No matter what race the conqueror was, as long as they weren't a siren, it was a cause for concern for Amira. However, the current situation was different. The sirens were facing a major crisis, and the Dampa were on the brink of extinction. In the past, the rights and survival methods the sirens had won through games would all be lost once the Dampa went extinct. The person who could save both races was the Siren Queen, who was currently in cold sleep. Most humanity are liars. I don't know what kind of person Nangu-sama is, but I hope you can swear by the covenants not to harm the sirens. I can agree to that request. Don't look so serious. Even if I do conquer your queen, I won't act recklessly. All I want is a little bit of power. No, should I say status? What do you mean by that? Inquired the siren. You don't need to understand. So, where exactly is the place where your queen is in cold sleep? Please follow me. We're almost there. Don't be too shocked by the queen's beauty. As the two of them moved forward, Plum ran up to Amira and complained, "There's no watermelon seller at all." Later, when Plum demanded Haruya's saliva as emergency food, Haruya firmly refused. Following Amira, they arrived at a long stone corridor adorned with fairy tale-like decorations. "By the way, you sirens never come ashore, right?" Haruya suddenly asked. "That's how it's always been. After all, Plum and the others can buy the necessary things for us. There's no need for us to go through the trouble of coming ashore, and we can't stay on land for too long." Amira clasped her hands together. "I heard we'd turn into foam." That's just a fairy tale," thought Haruya. Ignoring Amira's ranting about why they'd turn into foam, the three of them arrived at their destination. At the entrance were several armed mermaids who respectfully stepped aside upon seeing Amira. Currently, Amira was acting as the proxy representative, so she held considerable authority. Pushing open the door, Amira took a few steps forward. "Allow me to introduce the Queen of the Sirens. Her Majesty Layla Lorelei." A beauty slept within the ice. Her wavy blue hair cascaded over her youthful, crystalline face. Her snow-white body was adorned with dazzling gold, and from her thighs down, her legs transformed into vibrant scales. The scales reflected the light in the room, creating a kaleidoscope of colors. Enveloped in light and gold, the queen lay quietly in her ice coffin, resting on a throne made of bivalve shells. This was the Siren Queen who had been in cold sleep for centuries, the foolish queen who longed for her prince. Layla Lorelei. Image here. Taking a few steps forward, Haruya scanned her once more. Her curvaceous figure, mature and alluring appearance, and closed eyes that couldn't hide her innate beauty. The clothes she wore sparkled, like the only pearl in the endless sea. She's truly breathtaking. Despite her age, she had the youthful appearance of a bride-to-be. Wait, no, this is a Mo element. Like a legal lulai, is this a super legal onsen? It feels a bit subtle. In any case, what stood before him was a beauty hundreds of years old. Nangu-sama? Nangu-sama? Sorry. Haruya cleared his throat. Let's get started, then. Huh? What? What do you mean, what? We're starting the conquest. But. Amira looked at Haruya. Don't you need to rest? Yeah, and even if you don't need to rest, I still need to replenish my fluids, Haru-kun. Plum chimed in. Haruya responded to the former and ignored the latter. No need to rest. The sooner we finish, the better, right? That's true, but voiced the reluctant Amira. Haruya then grabbed Plum and said to her, "Start using that love magic. I'll reward you with anything afterward." "Oh really?" Plum's eyes sparkled. "How about a kilogram of lessons? I don't want to die. Then I'll think of something else. For now, let's prepare the spell." "Amira." Hearing Plum call her, Amira nodded. "I'll call for some help." Seeing that both of them were preparing for the Queen's Conquest game, Haruya finally relaxed. The more time wasted, the more difficult things would become. Now, it was time to conquer the Siren Queen. Chapter 29, The Love of a Masochistic Queen. Before the game began, there were a few things to take care of. The necessary steps and preparations. According to number 3 of the 10 Covenants, games must be played with wagers judged to be of equal value by both parties. Since the Queen entered her slumber by swearing to the Covenants, and the game is set up to make her fall in love with someone, then of course the wager required to win her love must also be set. You don't need to worry about that. Plum explained this from the side, while Amira, the siren standing nearby, nodded. Then, once you've decided to wager everything, please swear to the Covenants and touch the ice. After that, the damper and I will activate the spell, using magic to guide Nangu-sama into the Queen's dream. To cast the love magic, cheat, I'll also accompany you. Wagering everything, huh? That's acceptable, as long as you're willing to accept everything I own and all the information I have. I have no problem with that. Haruya responded casually to the two beside him. The representatives of the damper and sirens exchanged a glance, then began weaving the spell in perfect sync. Plum's eyes glowed with intricate patterns, and a gentle breeze swept through the room. Damper were skilled in magic, which allowed them to create spells as they imagined, making them extremely versatile mages. Logically, such abilities would give them a significant advantage in games. Now however, with their race's survival at stake, Plum was sure to push that advantage to the extreme. As they were weaving the spell, Plum's wings, which were as black as night, began to shimmer with countless irregular red lines, completely different from the geometric patterns of Jibral's halo. These red lines, like blood vessels, gradually spread to Plum's right hand. That hand slowly but intricately began to move. Although it was a somewhat large-scale spell, Haruya, as a human, couldn't sense the fluctuations of magic. "Haru-kun, listen up. Since this is a dream, the dream setting can be freely manipulated. So, the world we're building will be based on your imagination." "Got it. A world based on my imagination, huh?" Haruya thought for a moment. When it came to romance games, it was all about the classic gal games he'd played, like Tokamki Memorial. After finishing his thoughts, Haruya took a few deep breaths and asked, "As long as someone makes the Queen fall in love with him and awakens her, that's a victory. If they're rejected, it's a loss, and the loser will be removed from the game and pay the everything they wagered, right?" Although, this was also information from his memories. Seeing Amira nod, Haruya gestured for Plum to carry on. Once the everything was complete, the spell woven by Plum and Amira activated. Whoa! Haruya's entire body was submerged in icy seawater, his clothes heavy from being soaked. Floating to the surface, Haruya grabbed Plum beside him, using her as a life buoy. "Plum, hurry up and use magic to change this situation." Okay, but don't use me as a life buoy. And don't touch me in weird places, Haru-kun. You like this kind of thing anyway, don't you? I refuse if I'm not the one in charge. Why are you so stubborn about such strange things? Then, Plum used her magic again, altering the entire world. Like bitter coffee sweetened with cream and sugar, the world shifted from harsh to pleasant. The sea Haruya was in went from icy cold to a normal temperature. Since this was a dream world, and magic was at play, making such changes. No, making such settings was easy. Breathing became less difficult, and Haruya began to survey his surroundings, finding them similar to what he had imagined. Even though they were underwater, the sky was visible, and the shimmering sea surface had clouds drifting across it. Such a bizarre scene could only exist in a dream. The uneven terrain was smoothed out, and the rocky, coral-covered seabed transformed into a school building. The distant hills and roads were shaped from underwater reefs and crevices. The tropical fish swimming around gradually turned into nameless students, NPCs. In the blink of an eye, a fictional stage called Underwater High School was constructed. It was a high school built in the architectural style of Oshendo. Now then. Amira's expression was calm, as expected of a siren. The person who wishes to awaken the Queen must swear to the covenants, wager everything, and then touch the crystal. Since Haruya was the only one present trying to awaken the Queen, he walked over and touched the crystal floating in the air. Ascanti. The all-or-nothing conquest game had officially begun. Before it started, a dull narration played. Once the boring narration ended, pop music began to play. Under the pink background of the legendary coral, a mermaid with long blue hair swaying in the water appeared. That was the Queen. The Queen, dressed in a schoolgirl uniform, danced gracefully under the coral. The vibrant uniform clinging to her voluptuous body swayed with the water, further accentuating her sensual charm. The fish-scale tail extending from her short skirt looked utterly enchanting as it flicked the water. The queen's eyes seemed to be filled with melancholy, reaching out toward the sky as if she was eagerly waiting for something. All this just because she's longing for a love where she could be punished. Haruya deadpanned. This. Just as Haruya was about to take action, a floating window popped up, like in an RPG game. It listed various events. Plot, class. After school. Rooftop, etc. Events, hero saves the beauty. After school tutoring, etc. You can choose any of these, and the world will operate according to your choices, Haru-kun. I see. Haruya patted Plum's head. You worked hard to create these spells, but I don't plan on using them. Huh? What do you mean by that? Amira was so surprised that her words came out with a strange tone. Exactly what I said. Haruya walked straight toward the queen under the coral. The most direct and simplest way to conquer the queen was to insult her. Chapter 30, The Diary of a Masochistic Queen. A masochist, someone who derives pleasure from being bullied or humiliated, enjoys being mistreated, and has a submissive personality. The Queen of the Sirens, Layla Lorelei, who had been able to get everything she wanted since childhood, developed a personality that craved things she couldn't have. This wasn't due arrogance or pride, but rather a childish desire for mischief. The noble queen, living a life of luxury, underwent a significant change in her mindset after being influenced by fairy tales. For the love she longed for, she wagered everything by swearing to the covenants and entered cold sleep, waiting for the one who would awaken her. Thus, the sirens were left without a queen, the Dampa were pushed to the brink, and both races faced extinction. At this moment, their savior appeared, a hero named Nangu Haruya. The man who would save the foolish sirens and the seductive Dampa from their dire straits has now arrived. Alright, enough with the jokes. Wait a second, Nangu-sama, what do you mean by not using the Dampa's magic? All the challengers so far have failed. Don't worry, Amira-san. Didn't I tell you? I have a surefire conquest method. Haruya said confidently. Besides, Amira wasn't truly worried about Haruya. After all, her original wish was for a siren to awaken the queen. If the authority of the siren's representative fell into the hands of another race, it would likely lead to a disastrous situation. However, Amira remembered Haruya's earlier oath to protect the siren's rights and interests. Thinking this, Amira felt that letting Nangu-sama awaken the queen might not be such a bad idea. Leaving aside whether or not you'll use our love magic Haru-kun, your so-called conquest method might not necessarily succeed. Humphrey, Plum, you said it before. All we need is to make her feel like it's love, right? Yes, that's the essence of the love magic. Since the essence of love is uncertain, we just need to make it certain. Since everyone's perception of love is different, we can arbitrarily define it ourselves. The love magic created by the Damper, including Plum, was essentially a lust-inducing magic. This was Plum's reasoning. By making the queen feel like it's love, she might be tricked into actually falling for Haruya. Whatever. Since Haruya had no experience with this, he couldn't provide a proper response. However, he really did have a conquest method. Rather than wasting time here, it was better to quickly conquer the queen and move on to the next step. Nangu-sama, since you've already made your decision, you must have the resolve to match it, right? Yes. If I fail and am rejected, everything I have will belong to Her Majesty the Queen. In other words, it would belong to the sirens. Alright, since Nangu-sama is the challenger this time, I can't interfere too much. Amira bowed slightly. Good luck, and don't be too sad if you're rejected. I won't be. As Haruya walked forward, Plum, who was on his left, spoke up. Haru-kun, you really are a strange person. I don't want to be called strange by someone who's persistently trying to steal my sweat and saliva. Haruya retorted. What can I do? If I don't consume those, I can't survive. Plum shrugged. By the way, after conquering the queen, the Damper and sirens will be saved, right? Asked Haruya. Mostly, yes. After all, the queen is the only special individual among the sirens who can reproduce without draining her partner to death. But I think Haru-kun who refuses to use our love magic will definitely fail. Plum looked at the queen in the distance, because the queen has heard enough sweet talk over the years. That's true. Haruya agreed with Plum's assessment. At this point, Amira chimed in. You too, we're almost there. Damper over there, we should probably stop now. Since the two of them weren't participants in the game, they couldn't get too close and affect the challenger's performance. As his companions stopped, Haruya continued walking toward the Siren Queen, Layla Lorelei. Her blue hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her youthful appearance made her seem like a teenage girl. Her eyes, however, carried a hint of sadness. Hearing footsteps, Layla turned around, You are. Noble and beautiful queen, hello. Haruya greeted. Good afternoon. So it's afternoon now. Behind him, two pairs of eyes were watching, and NPCs occasionally passed by. Haruya adjusted his uniform. Since he was already a college student, wearing high school uniform felt a bit awkward. But never mind that, there was a woman hundreds of years old wearing a school uniform right in front of him. The NPCs didn't affect him much, and the UI that popped up allowed him to select the specific time. Since the queen thought it was afternoon, he'd set it to afternoon. Haruya slowly approached the queen, looking at the sky as he spoke. The weather is nice today, Layla. Yes, it's a rare sunny day. Look, there are fish flying over there. How cute. What a peculiar conversation. But. Haruya slightly tilted his head. Are you an idiot? Layla, huh? What? Plum and Amira, who were not far away, let out shocked exclamations. What are you doing, Haru-kun? Nangu-sama, no matter how you look at it, calling someone an idiot upon first meeting them is what a virgin humanity would do. Shut up. And how do you know I'm a virgin? Then Haruya decided to ignore them and turned to Layla. Really, you're so old, yet you're still dreaming like a little girl. You're such an idiot. You've been asleep for 800 years, wasting 800 years of your life. Haruya continued, sure, I envy not having to do anything, but this foolish behavior is utterly ridiculous. Fairy tales are all lies. If you don't understand that, how can you even call yourself an adult? If you think being pretty allows you to get away with anything, then you're just a hopeless fool. Try experiencing the hardships of work. Do you think earning money every day to buy figurines is easy? Wake up, you damn naive idiot queen. Huh? What? What? The queen looked confused, but her expression had changed significantly. It's over. The two behind him said in unison. Haru let out a sigh and was about to start round two, but the queen suddenly swam up to him. She lowered her head, her body trembling as if she was about to explode in anger. Huh? Did I do it wrong? As Haruya pondered this, the queen raised her head. She grabbed Haruya's hands, drool suddenly dripping from her mouth, her eyes turning into heart shapes. Please scold me more! Chapter 31, The Happy Life of the Siren Queen. If the purpose of returning to the past is to change past misfortunes, then it's equivalent to denying those misfortunes. But if you've already denied those misfortunes, what reason is there to go back and change the denied misfortunes? Haruya believed that his checkpoint ability represented this idea. It wasn't about going back to the past, but rather about starting over and doing better. That said, if he kept using this ability recklessly, there would come a day when his mind would break. Besides, the checkpoint ability he possessed might disappear one day, and when that happened, well, instead of worrying about such complicated and troublesome things, Haruya preferred to focus on the present. The method to conquer the Siren Queen was simple: change Queen Layla's perspective on the world through actions like criticism and insults. Let her know that not everything could be obtained, and not everyone would be captivated by her beauty. In other words, it was about using a sadistic approach to make the masochistic queen fall in love with him. With that in mind, Haruya quoted a passage he had read before, adding his own lines to it. You're so old, yet you're still daydreaming in your sleep? Are you an idiot? Who do you think you are? A fool? Do you think it's natural for everyone to treat you well? Even kindergartners are smarter than you. Do you even realize how long you've been asleep? 8 centuries. That's 800 years. Did you think you were some sleeping beauty waiting for her prince? You're over 800 years old. You old hag. I said you're old, but there's a limit to how old you can be. I love older characters, but only if they have brains. And most of all, I can't stand your attitude of every man will fall for me. If the world were that simple, it'd be great, but thinking you're special just because you're beautiful is laughable. Even if you're a beauty, if you don't have any brains, you're worthless. Of course, everything in this world was built on the foundation of beautiful girls. If Asuna from Sword Art Online weren't a beauty, she'd just be a spoiled girl stealing her brother's things. If Rei Inami from Neon Genesis Evangelion were fat, she'd just seem like a socially awkward idiot. Haruya had heard and seen many such hypotheticals, and while he thought there were both right and wrong aspects to them, he had more to say. Women should know how to hold back. So-called sexiness only has meaning when paired with modesty. Do you think it's right to strip naked just because someone asks you to? Or are you one of those idiots with a romance IQ below 20 who take off their clothes and glasses the moment things get serious? If you think showing more skin is better, then stop half-heartedly covering up and just become a nudist. You're such a half-baked idiot. And why should I bother pleasing a woman I don't like? From a common-sense perspective, that's just a waste of time and energy. Are you stupid? I'd rather chase after 2D girls, it's more meaningful, cost-effective, and won't hurt my wallet or heart. And one last thing, I don't know if it's some water spirit or what, but you only have that charm because of it. Honestly, your face is only above average. You should realize that if you just looked in the mirror. You sponge-brained idiot. After delivering his pre-prepared lines in one go, the queen, instead of being hurt, looked dazed. She grabbed Haruya's shoulders. I've been waiting for you. My prince. She had closed the distance between them at an alarming speed, her eyes shining. To think, humanity had such capable individuals. My beloved husband. Please scold me more as expected. Some part of her brain had completely lost its original function. She was a fool without common sense. But Haruya was still surprised at how quickly she accepted it. Don't get too close. I'm not really into cougars, especially one that's hundreds of years old. Physically, it's acceptable, but psychologically, it's a bit repulsive. Being disliked feels so good too, and just like that, under the wide-eyed gazes of Amira and Plum, the century-long game came to an end today. The surrounding scenery gradually disappeared, and the world woven by magic shattered before their eyes. Their consciousness sank and then rose, returning to the original city of Oshendo. Why did the queen turn out like that? What did you do to her? Amira closed in on Haruya, her flapping tail fin showing her panic. Why? Isn't it simple? According to the queen's desires, all I had to do was give her something she couldn't have. That's. Born into an environment where everything was handed to her, the thing she wanted most was something she couldn't have. Precisely because she couldn't have it, it felt precious and novel. Haruya explained. But insulting the queen like that. Amira clasped her hands over her chest. It feels a little satisfying. No, what am I saying? Well, that makes sense. Haruya patted Amira's shoulder. After all, as the acting representative of the Sirens, she had suffered a lot because of Layla's irresponsible decision to enter cold sleep. You really have a way with things. Haru-kun. Plum sat to the side, speaking in an envious tone. As they talked, the ice encasing the queen began to crack. The cracks slowly spreading until boom, the entire block of ice shattered like a dream, revealing the queen in all her glory. The queen wasted no time and swam to Haruya at top speed, her tail swishing as she rubbed her face against his. La la. The first person I've interacted with in so long is an humanity. I'm surprised to speak so childishly, even though she's over 800 years old. Your Majesty, welcome back. Plum welcomed. I'm back, thank you, little damper brother over there. Ugh. Plum, who was called little damper brother, shrank back and whistled to the side. In any case, the queen whispered into Haruya's ear, word by word, from now on, our happy life begins, my darling. My dear. My honey. Conquering her was great, but Haruya suddenly felt annoyed. Chapter 32, Romantic Comedy and the Daughter of the Sea? Have you ever experienced what it's like to sleep underwater? If not, let me reveal it to you now. Staring at the ceiling of the queen's bedroom in the underwater city of Oshendo, Haruya idly thought to himself. First of all, sleeping underwater requires magical protection, otherwise, it's eternal rest. Thanks to the spell Plum cast earlier, Haruya could now breathe freely underwater. In fact, whether he was actually breathing or not was up for debate. It was possible that Haruya only thought he was breathing, while in reality, he was simply opening his mouth to isolate the air in the water through magic. Regardless, sleeping underwater felt quite peculiar, as if everything around him could float away at any moment. Here, my darling. This is a dish I made myself, lava grilled meat. Even after sleeping for 800 years, my skills haven't deteriorated at all. Say I can eat by myself, Your Majesty. Just call me Layla, darling. Now come on, say I said, I can. Alright now, the Siren Queen, Layla Lorelei, was feeding Haruya a dish she had personally prepared in the kitchen. Her expression was serious, and when Haruya refused the first time, she pouted like a child, hurry up, or I'll get angry. Fine, fine. But underwater grilled meat is a pretty strange dish. Facing Layla, who was swishing her tail in dissatisfaction, Haruya finally opened his mouth. Layla happily watched as Haruya chewed the meat she had fed him. How is it? It tasted like someone had melted candles and caterpillars together, boiled them, and then let them cool. It was a flavor Haruya never wanted to experience again. My honest opinion is, it's disgusting, said Haruya. Hearing Haruya's honest response, Layla threw the utensils aside and hugged Haruya's waist. What? That's wonderful. You said the dish I made is disgusting. It's truly a masterpiece of disgusting cuisine that I spent 3 hours perfecting. You did it on purpose, didn't you? You idiot queen. Thank you, darling, for saying that. Amira and Plum, who were the test subjects, are still collapsed at the kitchen entrance. I'll send someone to tend to them later. What on earth did you put in that dish? Nothing much, just a whole lot of my love for you, My darling Haruya. No, no, that was pure malice, wasn't it? Just to get him to scold her. Whatever. Haruya pressed his index finger against Layla's forehead as she leaned in, adopting a resigned expression. If you want to be punished, I'll discipline you properly when I have time. But now's not the time. What are we going to do, darling? Tilting her head, Layla sat down on the bed, her tail swishing as bubbles floated up and filled the room. After thinking for a moment, Haruya explained his goals and subsequent steps. The reason was simple. Now that Haruya was the Siren's representative, he had the authority to challenge the representatives of other nations. This allowed him to take the next step. Conquering the Werebeasts. The Imanity side had Sora and Shiro, making things more difficult, but the Werebeasts didn't have such concerns. Layla, do you want to make the Siren's lives happier? Of course I'm already happy with you, darling. I want everyone to be happy too, but I won't share you with anyone. That goes without saying. I don't have the ability to clone myself after all. Haruya shrugged. No, Layla shook her head, her gaze falling between Haruya's legs. If we use your white essence, combined with the damper's magic, we might be able to create many copies of you. That's really... Haruya was lost for words. That way, your punishments would multiply too. He added the degenerate queen in a dreamy state. Snap out of it, Layla. Haruya shook Layla, who was about to be consumed by her delusions. After all, Haruya didn't want any clones of himself. Back to her senses, Layla went back to the initial discussion. So, darling, what's the plan? Haruya, declare war on another nation. Layla, the Fleugil? The elves? We can't win against them. Haruya, are you an idiot? Yes, I am. Now scold me more, darling, Layla said in anticipation. Declaring war on the Fleugil elves right off the bat was way too reckless. Ignoring Layla's request to scold her more, Haruya gave her a light chop on the head. Ouch. Facing Layla, who was rubbing her head, Haruya continued, our primary target is obviously the nearby Werebeasts. The Werebeasts. I see. I don't get it at all. Layla admitted. I didn't expect you to in the first place. Haruya noticed Layla suddenly became deep in thought. Then she just stood up from the bed and said, darling, I'm going out for a bit. Okay. I want some alone time anyway. Layla patted Haruya's head and swam out of the bedroom. Alright, time to think. The primary target was the Werebeasts, specifically Izuna's tribe. Aside from his fondness for bestiars, Haruya was also quite familiar with the Werebeasts' abilities. Their blood break, their high-frequency communication, and the types of games they played. Several hours later, Layla still hadn't come back to bother Haruya, which made him curious. Walking into the hallway, Haruya asked Amira, who had recovered but still looked slightly pale. Amira-san, where's Layla? Sorry, Your Majesty, I can't eat that super dreamy kilogram lava salad. I still have to draft documents to let everyone know our queen has awakened, even though it's probably useless. Amira shouted some nonsense in a daze, clearly traumatized by Layla's cooking. Haruya could understand. That low-tier flavor was hard to forget. Haruya never wanted to eat Layla's cooking again. Hopefully, that would be the case. But for now, Haruya interrupted Amira and clarified, No. I just want to know where Layla went. Her Majesty. Amira patted her cheeks. With a serious look, she stared at Haruya. Her Majesty said she's going to have your child. Huh? Chapter 33, The Diary of a Virgin Father. Ahem. Alright, let's seriously talk about what Layla is planning to do. Haruya started. Her Majesty is going to have a child for you, Nangu-sama. Amira said nonchalantly. That was way too fast. You explaining it so straightforwardly makes it even harder to process. That's how it is, Nangu-sama. No, I should call you Your Majesty. Later, I'll need to draft some announcements about the sirens and review the recent trade logs and tariff proposals. I'm really busy. Ugh. Suddenly my stomach hurts. You've got it rough, Amira-san. Haruya nodded helplessly. Then Amira let out a sigh of relief and continued, but once you and Her Majesty get used to Oshendo and understand the state of the nation, I'll leave everything to you too. I'll just be an assistant so things will be much easier. This surprised Haruya. Huh? Me too? What are you saying, Your Majesty? The future of the Sirens and Oshendo is in your and Her Majesty's hands. Well, there was no helping it. Haruya wasn't fond of thinking about political issues, but once he became the representative, it was a responsibility he couldn't avoid. Not only that, but he also had to figure out how to maintain the relationship between the Sirens and Damper, ensuring neither side faced extinction. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. Please do your best, Your Majesty, said Amira as she made her way out. I will. Haruya nodded. Oh, right, halfway out, Amira turned back and stared at Haruya. Her Majesty should be back soon. Please don't tease her too much. What do you mean, tease? Layla's the one who's looking forward to it. After watching Amir disappear around the corner of the hallway, Haruya headed back to the bedroom. For now, his only place to stay was the bedroom of the Siren Queen, Layla. There was nowhere else to go. Although he could do whatever he wanted in Oshendo using his authority as the representative, Haruya had no intention of expending that kind of energy right now. Though the occasional mermaid passing by was nice to look at. Returning to the bedroom, it wasn't long before he heard voices outside. Layla was talking to someone. Alright, we're going to see Daddy now. What the heck? Haruya stared at the entrance to the room. As his heart raced, Layla swam in. No, it wasn't just Layla. Behind her was a little mermaid who looked strikingly similar to Layla, with hair color somewhere between Haruya's black and Layla's blue. A delicate face, a petite figure, and a tail fin that seemed to leave a rainbow in its wake. Haruya remembered. The Siren Queen, Layla, could use a strand of hair to extract a trace of a person's soul and synthesize it to create a being resembling herself. In other words, the Siren's method of reproduction. So when Layla left earlier, the reason she patted his head was probably to get a strand of his hair, right? Swimming up to Haruya, Layla sat on the edge of the bed, while the little mermaid on her back looked at Haruya with curious eyes. Wow! Such pure eyes. Such a delicate and adorable appearance. The little mermaid was dressed in an outfit adorned with ribbons, seashells, and pearls, with her bangs neatly trimmed. Her gem-like eyes stared at Haruya, who was less than a meter away. "This is what I told you about earlier," said Layla to the child. Papa? Exclaimed the tiny mermaid. Cough. Haruya spat out a mouthful of blood. Well, air. And wiped his mouth. What destructive power. He muttered. Darling, your way of speaking has changed. No need to be shy. This is our child. The little mermaid didn't fully understand their conversation, but she opened her arms and swam into Haruya's embrace. She then made a contented expression, smiling cutely. Hey. That's mommy's spot. Get away from darling right now. Layla scolded. Seeing Layla try to pull the little mermaid away, Haruya immediately stopped her. Why are you getting so worked up over a child? The little mermaid in Haruya's arms tilted her head. Papa? It's fine, it's fine. Layla's just being unreasonable, said Haruya as he gave her head pats. You're already protecting our daughter so quickly. Am I not important? Cried out the jealous degenerate. Yeah, not important. So happy. Layla's face lit up with joy at Haruya's response. But then, I'm still a bit upset. Oh, I forgot I need to report to the others. Wait here for me, I'll be back soon after the report. Report? She probably meant apologizing and explaining things to the elders. After all, her idiotic actions had affected both races. With Layla gone, Haruya was left alone with the little mermaid. Calling you little mermaid all the time isn't going to work. He mumbled. The child looked at him curiously. Since you were born in the sea. Haruya leaned back against the pillow, holding the little mermaid. Do you like the sea? Sea? Like. She answered cutely. Wow, you're pretty smart. Papa? Such lethal lines. Okay, let's call you Mihama. Haruya named her Mihama? Yeah, Mihama-chan. Having decided on a name, Haruya let her sit on the bed. Image here, since he had no experience raising children, Haruya wasn't sure what to say. Oh, right. He grabbed something from the items he had brought with him. Look, Mihama-chan, this is an H. No, wait, let's pick something else. He set aside the adult DVD. As the saying goes, start them young. Otaku knowledge should be taught from an early age. If Mihama could understand these things, she'd grow up to be an outstanding gamer, conquering all the gal games and leading the sirens to the peak of life. No, fish life. In a world where everything was decided by games, Otaku had immense potential and power. What an ideal world. But ideals aside, he had to focus on the present. Mihama-chan, this is a PSP. PPPP. Haha. PPP. No, not PPPP. Haruya raised his right hand and extended a finger. It's PSP. Say it after me. If you get it right, I'll give you something tasty. Probably. As he waited for Mihama to repeat after him, Haruya noticed her leaning forward. Chomp, she bit down on Haruya's extended index finger. I didn't mean for you to suck on it. That tickles. Suddenly, Thud Plum, who had been standing at the entrance carrying something, bumped into the door. Then, she turned around and fled. Haru-kun. Pervert dad. What the hell? Haruya lamented the sudden cliché misunderstanding. This was not the right way to start things. Chapter 34, Plans, Daughter, and Games. After Haruya explained what had just happened to Plum, she finally understood. I see, I thought you had reached the point where even little girls weren't safe from your desires, but it turns out you still have some humanity left in you. Anyway, Haru-kun, can you give me a little bit of your fluids? Stop talking nonsense. This little mermaid, whom Haruya had named Mahama, was created by the Siren Queen Layla using a strand of Haruya's hair and a part of her own soul. Although she was similar to a clone of Layla, in another sense, she was also the child of both Haruya and Layla. How stingy. Still, don't worry, Haru-kun. When I shouted earlier, I actually cast a soundproofing spell around us. So no one overheard our conversation. Said Plum. Is that so? Although it's all pretty trivial stuff. Haruya dismissed. Deciding to put things to perspective, the trap damper explained, No, this isn't trivial at all. As the new king of the Sirens, and with the daughter of the Siren Queen here, this is a topic that would shock the outside world. Haruya nodded. Ah, I see. Since both the Sirens and Damper are on the brink of extinction, any changes will be closely watched by other races, right? Yes. After all, some races are eagerly waiting for that to happen. Oceano's underwater resources are incredibly rich. As the two talked, Mihama, who had swum behind Haruya, reached out and grabbed Plum's hair. Papa, what's this? This is a perverted damper. Don't touch it, Mihama-chan. It'll dirty your hands. Haruya caringly educated the little mermaid. What kind of description is that? This is the nature of the whole damper race. We're not perverts. Sucking solescence is our way of survival, just like dung beetles roll dung. Ah, no, that's not a good comparison. You realize it's not a good comparison, huh? Forget about those troublesome issues. Plum gently brushed Mihama's hand away, but when she tried to pinch Mihama's cheek, the little mermaid dodged. It seemed this daughter was quite obedient and wouldn't interact with the perverted damper. I guess I'm disliked. Anyway, I brought some snacks. And this, a game called chess. Plum continued. Chess, huh? Haruya grabbed Mihama's hand as she tried to swim to the ceiling and signaled her not to wander off. The obedient Mihama sat on Haruya's shoulder, listening intently to their conversation even though she didn't fully understand. Since I don't have much to do right now, playing a game isn't a bad idea. Mihama-chan, here, have some fruit. Haruya picked up a piece of fruit from the plate and brought it to Mihama's mouth. Like a little animal, Mihama sniffed it before taking a bite. Papa, yummy. It's not Papa that's yummy, it's the fruit. While educating Mihama, Haruya remembered that he wasn't very good at chess, though he had some understanding of Chinese chess. Even though both are chess games, they have many differences. For example, pawn promotion in chess and blocking in Chinese chess require different techniques. Of course, Haruya wasn't completely clueless about chess. Castling, bishops moving diagonally without limit, and so on. Let's not waste any time. I'll play a game with you, Haru-kun. I won't lose to you. Plum challenged. We'll see. Mihama-chan, don't wander off. Okay, Papa. Mihama sat quietly on Haruya's shoulder. On the chessboard, the left side is numbered 1 to 8 from bottom to top, and the bottom is labeled 8 to 8 from left to right. Haruya held the white pieces, so according to the rules, he moved first, pawn to c3. You don't have to say it out loud. Plum pointed out. It's a habit. It helps me understand the current situation. The current situation, huh? What's your next move, Haru-kun? As Plum asked, she moved her pawn from d7 to d5, advancing 2 squares. In chess, pawns can move 1 or 2 squares on their first move. Since advancing further would risk being captured, Haruya moved his pawn from f2 to f4. Seeing Haruya's move, Plum became more aggressive, moving her pawn from b7 to b6. Looking at the board, Haruya smiled at Plum's question. You know the pieces I hold, don't you? The Siren's race piece, plus the Were Beasts game content. You know about the Were Beasts games too? Asked the surprised Damper. Ah. Haruya pretended to have slipped up. Pretend I didn't say anything. I heard it clearly. Oh, your daughter's name is Mihama, right? A nice name. So, Mihama, did you hear what your daddy said? Don't know. Mihama giggled, playing with Haruya's hair. Tell me about the Were Beasts games, and I'll do anything for you, Haru-kun. Really? That's quite the careless statement, Plum. My tongue slipped. Plum pouted, moving her knight from the back row to prepare an attack. Papa, prompted the little mermaid. Ah, thank you. Haruya opened his mouth to eat the fruit Mihama handed him, then continued, putting aside whether your statement was careless. Plum, are you worried about the relationship between the Damper and Sirens? Plum nodded, before saying, even though we're bound by the covenant, the Queen's awakening won't truly solve the problem. What we need is a complete change. You know, Were Beast males are full of energy. Haruya revealed. For example, Hatsu's Ino, who had double-digit wives. Haru-kun, are you saying? Plum set down the queen piece she was holding, her expression turning serious. She began to speculate. Since Haruya knew about the Werebeasts games, are you planning to challenge the Werebeasts, whom even the elves can't handle? It's not simply a challenge, Plum. It's about winning. Victory. Victory. Mihama hugged Haruya's arm, swimming around in the air. Papa, eat. Here you go, Saya. Haruya fed Mihama another piece of fruit. Listen to me, you father-daughter pair. Plum cried out. What? Interrupting family bonding time is very rude. Soar, wait, no. I'm saying, are you really planning to challenge them? Yes, I'm betting on this. In Haruya's hand appeared a shining piece. Since war was forbidden, this piece represented an entire race, the race piece. Chapter 35, Meetings are pointless, just go for it. In Plum's eyes, Haruya's actions were incredibly reckless. Just after awakening the queen, he was already declaring war on another race, and even wagering the race piece. It all seemed far too hasty. Everything needed a process. Acting too rashly could turn initiative into passivity, putting them at a disadvantage. Since war was forbidden in the sport, the outcome of games became critically important. I don't know what you're thinking, Haru-kun, but the Werebeasts have a lot of resources. They've gained vast territories from humanity, and the Eastern Federation is also a juicy piece of land. Plum stared at the chessboard in front of her. Haruya's queen and knight had firmly surrounded her king. From the start, Haruya knew he wouldn't lose. After all, to Plum, he was someone with prophetic abilities. Shifting her gaze from the board, Plum was more interested in understanding Haruya's thoughts than the outcome of the game. Plum continued, the elves, Elfgard, have challenged the Eastern Federation multiple times, only to fail each time. And now, the new kings of humanity has challenged the Werebeasts, but the match was abruptly halted, leaving things in a stalemate. Don't tell me, Haru-kun. You participated in that battle too? To be honest, you're right. Ah, Mihama-chan, don't just take that out. Figurines are expensive, you know. Haruya had brought his figurines and game consoles with him. Hearing Haruya's words, Mihama nodded and swam to the head of the bed, holding the figurine. Returning to the topic, Haruya didn't plan to hide anything further. I spent some time in the humanity capital, Elkia City. Because the game was interrupted and bound by the covenants, I couldn't find out what the Werebeasts game was about. While trying to protect her king,